What is going on, IB Nation? Welcome to yet another post-game edition of the Irish Breakdown podcast. I'm Vince D'Addario. That guy over there is Trevor Trowbridge. That guy down there holding us up, he's the foundation. That's Brian Driscoll. Yeah, just hold you like Hercules down there. Hercules.
Sir.
All right.
Just ruined it. You took a really cool thing and you just ruined it.
Eddie Murphy ruins nothing. I don't know what you're talking about.
No,
but
you ruined it.
So anyway, we are here. We are live, and we are ready to talk about Notre Dame's dominating 51-14 victory over the Naval Academy, the previously unbeaten Naval Academy. And there were a good group of people out there thought that Notre Dame wouldn't be able to stand up to the challenge of Navy, and they certainly did the job today. So again, that was a 51-14 win for Notre Dame. Lots of good stuff to talk about for Notre Dame offensively, good stuff on defense, bad stuff on both sides of the ball that of course we'll talk about. We'll talk special teams. I mean, we'll touch on hey, look, we're equal opportunity. There's any
bad on offense. I'm just kidding.
Well, we're equal opportunity, so we'll talk about everything, and then we'll hand out some game balls, and then we'll hit super chat. So, friendly reminder: if you've never joined us in a post game show before, you can ask questions, you can make a comment, you can do whatever you want to do in the chat. But if you want us to have it up on the screen, you need to send it with a super chat, and we will get to those at the end of the show. Everybody should be happy. Everybody should be excited. There should be no Debbie Downers in the chat today. This was a dominating victory for Notre Dame, and that moves them to 7-1. And I don't know what their percentage is to make the playoff, but it's
who freaking cares about
slightly
that?
Better than it was.
Yeah,
last
did you
week.
see the one ESPN thing where that's what the playoff would look like today? Like, why are we talking about what it would look like today? It's not.
Who cares?
It's such a useless projection.
A bunch of those teams play each other between now and then.
This was also the 6th straight win for Notre Dame, which is the most consecutive wins in a row for Marcus Freeman. As the broadcast noted, Marcus Freeman tied Frank Leahy for the most wins over ranked teams in his first 3 seasons. This was his 10th victory over a ranked team, ranked at the time they play, including the 3rd win over a ranked team so far this season. So
there we go.
Little context into that victory as well, Vince.
Well, in big picture, I mean, that look, at the end of the day, yes, it was the Naval Academy. Notre Dame is used to playing Navy, used to not necessarily being in angst playing against Navy, but this was a really good Navy football team, number one. I want to put that out there. But number two, and probably most importantly to their resume, because we can talk resume when we're talking big picture, it's a win, a big win over a ranked opponent. Yeah. It's a neutral site, but technically you were the road team. I mean, Navy could have busted there.
I believe Navy chose to play this game at MetLife Field.
Yes, that's absolutely correct. So this is you're on the road, big W, lots to be happy about. There were no, Notre Dame wasn't putting up style points. They were just running their offense and playing defense. Yeah. So, and again, we'll talk about it. Navy had 6 turnovers in this game, a huge part of this game. Obviously, Notre Dame did a decent job of putting points on the board after those turnovers, and Navy just kind of dug themselves a hole at times as well. But Notre Dame took advantage, and that's what you have to do when those things are given to you, right? When they're handed to you on a silver platter, you got to take advantage. And
I love when Sean McDonough quietly just corrected Greg McElroy. Like, none of the turnovers were because of Notre Dame. And he's like, the Leonard Moore interception is pretty good. So let's move on. And it just was like,
I mean, how long is that kid? Holy cow.
Yeah.
Like just I was sitting there watching the game with my son. He's like, that receiver didn't have a prayer. Like he just totally got boxed out of that throw, and Leonard Moore just went up there and just stretched and made that play. So lots of fun stuff to talk about, but this is the first segment. And so segment number 1, Brian, since you are kind of new to the post-game show this year, I mean, honestly, we go around the horn and we give our gut reactions to the game and our thoughts on the game. And this is big picture stuff. And then we'll dive into the nitty gritty as we move forward. So I like to go clockwise. So Trevor, you're up, my friend. What are your thoughts on the game? Yeah, that's right, Brian. Know your role in this.
I get for telling Vince he's the captain of the show today. I'm just a guest.
That's what you get.
Oh,
Go ahead,
man.
Trevor.
I said it at the start of the morning. Let's have a day, gentlemen. This was a good victory for Notre Dame. Vince, good to see you again. Brian, awesome guest to have on the show today. And I am ready to dive into this post game, okay? So, gut reactions. One, the offense looked fantastic today. They looked great. There's been a lot of scrutiny with the offense, even in good wins. The offense is the highlight of a lot of, well, they scored 31, but, the offense, Riley Leonard hit some passes, but today, I don't know. I'm sure once the dust settles and we can sit back and look at the all-22, there's going to be some things that we find, right? There always will be. But Notre Dame came out and they beat a good Navy football team. Don't get tied into this, it's Navy. It doesn't matter. You beat a team by 37 points. A ranked undefeated team by 37 points. I don't care if it's Navy. I don't care if it's Boise State. I don't care if it, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's you when you beat a undefeated ranked team by 37 points, you don't do that by accident. Brian, you and I talked all week about how Notre Dame was going to be prepared going into this game. And there was so much emphasis on the defensive end of the football of how they're going to be prepared, what looks are they going to face. The offense came in ready. Mm-hmm. Shades of Purdue, of no matter what Navy's defense tried to throw at them, there was no answer that they could come up with. Riley Leonard today played fantastic. This is probably the best game he's played in a Notre Dame uniform so far. He looked comfortable. First half, he was dealing. Mm-hmm. And he was on target. He was on time. That deep out route to Jordan Faison was on the money. Perfect rhythm throw. Couldn't have walked it out better to him. We talked about it earlier in the week that this was going to be a potential Jeremiah Love breakout game. Well, he finished with a $102 and 2 touchdowns.
Dude, you were adamant about that all week. Like, Trevor, you said that I think in at least 2 shows this week that you really felt like Jeremiah Love was going to have a breakout this game. Mm-hmm. And I'd say, yeah, he kind of got that one right.
Yeah. I'd say he played pretty decent today. Not too bad. But this was a game where Notre Dame had to come out and prove some things offensively, and I think that they checked a lot of boxes. Now, again, we talked about after the Louisville game, this was going to be a 3-game stretch where we kind of evaluate Notre Dame with where they're at. And now, and I'm still holding true to what I said earlier in the week. Yes, they beat an undefeated ranked team by 37. I'm not saying bring on Texas. I'm not saying bring on Oregon. But these are the necessary steps that we wanted to see in this 3-game window, and I'm very satisfied with what we saw as a team today. There's some things to clean up on defense. There is. Now, I've looked at this a couple different ways, and I was thinking about this as the game went on. You still play Army, who's a triple option team later this season. But at least it's not a cleanup thing from, they have 5 teams left to play, and once they get to the playoffs, they're going to be facing an offense just like Navy's, and they still held Navy to 14 points. So overall, I'm happy with how today went. The offense played great. Defense, some things to clean up before you go back and you play Army at Yankee Stadium. But, fellas, I'm never going to be upset with a 37-point win. Notre Dame's rolling right now. They're one of the hottest teams in college football. I'm a happy guy. Happy camper.
I'm a little disappointed that the Notre Dame defense got outscored 14-7 in this game. I mean, I expected a little bit more from them in this game. You know what I mean? No, in all seriousness, obviously, guys, this is a big win for Notre Dame. Trevor, you nailed it. We said it's like, guys, we're not going to sit here and be like, okay, Georgia, Bama, Ohio State, you guys are done. Although after watching Ohio State today, I want all those teams. I think Notre Dame can play with anybody when they are on their game. But because they did this to Navy, it doesn't equal, okay, Notre Dame is now the number 1 team in the country with how they're playing right now. It's not. They did what a top 5 to 7 team should do when you play a team at the bottom of the top 25 who also then makes mistakes in a game. They absolutely dominated. We're talking in the group text during the show, guys, or during the game, and it's like, I'm like, man, they need to stop here, and they gotta do this there, and they gotta make this play here, and boy, if this team goes down and scores, I you start the game and you go up 7-0. Navy goes down and fumbles, right? On their first drive, they're moving the ball. They fumble. Notre Dame returns it. They go down and score. And then you give up a big play to Navy. Or, actually, no, you then force it. They'd have another fumble. You go down, miss a field goal. So your chance to really put this thing away early is gone. Then they go down. You give up a couple big plays. They score a touchdown. It's 14-7. And just like that, guys, all that momentum is potentially gone. You had a big miss on a field goal. They go right down the field and score. There's a lot of pressure on the offense now. And the Notre Dame offense responds with a 3-play drive of 75 yards where you get a what'd you do? Like a little sprint out, and he just runs for 7. Then you show you show a you get a minus or a +4, right? I can't even read my own notes. Yeah, he slanted. I'm like complete -6. Slant across the center guard is my note, but I'm like, I go C +5, Vince, and C -6, and I'm like C -6. It was the play where they had the 4-yard gain, and then you come back on the very next play, and it's a 64-yard touchdown. Then the defense has its first actual force of the game, where they come up with and they force a punt on that next drive, and the offense does what? They go on this really long drive and put the game away 28-7, and converted a 3rd down and a 4th down on that drive to put the game away. And I loved Marcus Freeman's willingness to go for it in those situations, knowing like, hey, you don't get it here. Navy's got a short field, not a lot of time left. They start with the ball in the second half. That was a huge drive. And the game was basically over at that point in time. And so very, very happy with that performance, fellas. Just a good team win. Your offense, and here's the big thing for me that I'll say. When I look at this performance, fellas, this defense has carried Notre Dame in these type of games for years. We'll talk about the defense later. I didn't think the defense played all that well. They didn't play bad, but they didn't play well. And this game was about, all right, offense, are you going to step up and do what you need to do because your defense isn't doing it like they've done for you 50 times the last how many years? And the offense said, yeah, we got you guys. Don't worry about it. You got a bunch of young guys on defense. You're going to make some mistakes. You're going to give up some plays. Don't worry about it. We got it. Right. And all season, Notre Dame has been one of the least opportunistic teams when the ball hit the ground. Today, every time the ball hit the ground, except for I think once, I think Notre Dame recovered it. I think one of the fumbles went out of bounds. I don't even think that they could even call it that. But they fumbled the ball 7 times. Notre Dame recovered 5 of them. So it's like the defense did what they needed to do, but they weren't on top of their game today. And we'll talk about why when we get to the defensive section. But that's what good teams are supposed to be, right? And we've watched this offense do what was needed in a lot of these games where they were winning convincingly, right? The offense last week, they just did what they needed to do. Wasn't bad, wasn't good, wasn't great, I should say. They were solid. They did what they needed to do. Did the same thing against Louisville, did the same thing against Miami. Yeah, they dominated Stanford. They dominated Georgia Tech. Those teams aren't good. This is a quality Navy football team. And the offense converted turnovers into points. They answered Navy scores. I think Notre Dame answered Navy on every time they scored. I think Notre Dame went right down the field and scored. Did they not? Let me go to the second half. So Navy scored on the first. Yeah, Notre Dame answered that Navy touchdown at the beginning of the second half. Went right down the field and scored a touchdown. Converted 2 third downs on the drive, which again, Trevor, you and I talked about it in the keys to victory. 3rd down efficiency was going to be huge in this game. And on both sides of the ball. And I'm looking at the numbers. Notre Dame went 8 of 13. Navy went 4 of 11. That's a win.
That's a win on both sides.
That's a win.
Yeah.
And Notre Dame went 1 of 1 on 4th down. Navy went 2 of 3 on 4th down. So again, that's a win. So there's things obviously we'll point to on special teams. There were some mistakes, and defense are some mistakes, and the offensive line had some silly penalties, and including one hold on Emil Wagner that I have to go back and watch again because I still can't find the hold.
Kid fell down.
I'm gonna have to watch it again. I was like, okay, I don't see it on that one, but you did what you needed to do. Oh, Navy hurt themselves. Yeah, exactly. Notre Dame made them pay for it.
Yeah.
And I think part of the mistakes, it's not a coincidence that they're playing a big time team on national TV and all these other things, and the pressure got to them, and Notre Dame, who does this every week, took advantage of it. So when you talk about what kind of game was this, what kind of win was this, was a great team win, but it was a needed win, not just from building your resume standpoint. And I'm rooting like Navy like crazy the rest of the year, obviously, to go out there and whoop the rest of their teams. And my wife, whose grandfather was in the Navy, she's like, I'm really torn on this one. I obviously want Notre Dame to win, but I don't want to beat them too bad. And I was like, it's okay, baby. You just love Navy 364 days a year. That's all you need to do is love the Naval Academy 364 days a year. But today, they got to catch whatever's coming to them. You know what I mean? So, but you needed that big win over a ranked team who I think will have a shot to climb back into the top 25 moving forward as more teams get knocked out. But you needed a win where the defense realized, hey, guys, we don't have to be perfect every week.
Mm-hmm.
We don't, because our offense is dealing right now. And this is now the third game in a row that I would argue that the defense came out and was giving up ground immediately. And the offense said, don't worry, guys, we got you. So I love the team win aspect of it, Vince, because they didn't play perfect football. They played far from perfect football, and they were still dominant.
Yeah.
And I absolutely love that. It's a great win. Great team win for Notre Dame.
Sean, welcome to the program. Thoughts on, overall gut reaction to the game that we just saw, Notre Dame's 51-14 win over Navy.
I'm happy with the team win. I think the collaborative effort of this team, the way they went in, I felt, I remember talking to Brian at times this week, and I was like, usually I get a little anxious about games against Navy. For some reason, I just didn't feel I was totally confident in this team. And I think it went back to the small, subtle things that I saw against Georgia Tech that really has nothing to do with the opponent. It is about the process. And I think this team is starting to learn the importance of process over results. And Marcus Freeman has always preached that. Like, forget about the results, because if you're doing it wrong, eventually the results are going to go against you. And I think they're starting to realize that. And they're starting to realize, we're a really good team. Like, we're the most talented team when we walk on the field 95% of the time. Let's act like it. Let's play like it. Let's go out here and execute on both sides of the ball. And like you said, the pressure of this season, which we thought would be a little less than what Notre Dame is used to, because usually they have to go undefeated to get into the playoffs. And that's helped. That Northern Illinois loss connected to the expanded playoffs has actually helped Notre Dame this season to be able to recover and now build. I really think we're seeing a team that if they can continue to do what they can do offensively. I think we talked about this a little bit last week. Don't focus on being or reaching expectations of being this super explosive team. Just do what you can do. Offensive line, we know the ceiling that you have from a talent standpoint because of injuries. All we're asking you to do is do what you can do. Fight, be consistent. You guys, I'm sure you're going to break it down and love watching the film. It looked like to me that they stayed on blocks. They moved their feet. I love the move of moving Billy Shrout to the left guard. I think it helped Anthony Knapp immensely. Not having another young player next to him and keeping Wagner and Rocco next to each other. And I think the way they picked up the blitz was absolutely amazing. Those are the small nuances of this offense that we're watching piece by piece be added. It doesn't matter who they're playing. I don't care that Navy gave the game away. I'm more focused on the operation of this football team. And the operation that I saw today is building towards a championship operation. You know they have the level of talent, and they're doing this. Once again, I said this last week, I'm amazed at the coaching job, and you have to tip your cap to Marcus Freeman to be able to recover after Northern Illinois, get this team refocused, and to continue to build what they've done with Riley Leonard and building his confidence, building the offense or rebuilding the offense on the fly. There are so many things as a Notre Dame fan to be sky high about with this team, especially about the process and the operation. That's what I take from the win today. The score is amazing. Beating a ranked team is amazing. Congratulations to Marcus Freeman for 10 wins against ranked teams in his first 3 years, tying the record at Notre Dame. I think it was Coach Leahy he tied the record today. That's absolutely phenomenal. All of the heat that he's taken, especially after the Northern Illinois loss, congratulations to Coach Freeman. Congratulations to this team. They're trending upward, and I think they're going to get better going into November. I'm excited.
Can I say something real quick? Notre Dame has 7 wins in the season so far. Not a single win, I would argue, Like of the 6-game winning streak, not a single one of those wins, in my opinion, was in doubt. And I know the Louisville game was a 7-point game, and it was the only non-double-digit game of the year, but that was one where Notre Dame kind of went into protect the lead mode, and every time Louisville scored, they went right down the field and scored. Like, that's the impressive thing too, guys. It's not even just that they're winning, but they're whooping teams. And you watch how teams play the week after they play Notre Dame. That's something I've noticed. Remember, Sean, when we were kids, and Vince, you might remember this because you're a little younger than me, but not that young. But I remember watching Notre Dame when we were kids, and it was always interesting to watch teams the week after they played Notre Dame because they never looked very good, because they were kind of shell-shocked, a little beat up by playing Notre Dame. And we've seen that a lot from teams this year. I mean, even A&M, they were not great early against McNeese State. You know, Louisville went out the next week again. It was a little shell-shocked and against who did they get beat by the week after Notre Dame beat them? SMU. And we saw what Stanford did the week after Notre Dame pounded them, also against SMU. SMU's like, thank you, Notre Dame. You know what I mean? For beating these guys up, and then we get them. And then we saw the same thing from Georgia Tech today. So that's something else I've noticed too, guys, is this team is winning these games convincingly, and it's getting more and more and more dominant every week. And we saw that a little bit today.
Well, I'll give my thoughts. I think I want to build on what both of you guys were talking about. I mean, look, what you want from a football team is you want them to get better week in and week out, right? I mean, that's you don't want to be the same team you were week 1 as you are week 7 and then week 12 and et cetera, et cetera. We can realistically say that about this Notre Dame team. They are not the same team on both sides of the ball that we saw in week 1, week 2, week 3. They have progressively gotten better and better and better and better. Look, no one's trying to excuse the Northern Illinois loss, because that's going to be something that we're going to talk about the rest of the year. Okay.
We'll have to.
Well, we're going to have to, because there could be a bunch of one-loss teams by the end
I
of
don't
this
think there will be, but yeah, it'll be interesting.
Yeah. So anyway, the point that I'm making is right now, you put Notre Dame's defense, who didn't play amazing today, but still only gave up 14 points.
To a team over averaging 44 points a game coming in.
Yes, exactly right. And an offense that is, I don't want to say scoring at will, but they're scoring touchdowns pretty consistently, right?
Yeah.
And we'll dive into that deeper, and I've got a bunch of numbers I want to throw out here when we start talking about the offense, but this team is becoming an actual team that believes that they're pretty stinking good. And they're starting to play with a little bit of a swagger on both sides of the ball. I commented to you guys in the group chat this afternoon that Riley Leonard looks, I mean, the last 3-4 weeks, he's looked incredibly comfortable. He's looked incredibly comfortable in the games. Like, he doesn't look like the same guy that was playing the first few weeks of the season, right? I mean, look, he played well enough to beat A&M, right? But he didn't look super comfortable. Right now, he looks comfortable with what he's doing, in my opinion. He's stepping into throws. He's staying in the pocket when he needs to. He's still going to make some mistakes. There's no doubt about it. But overall, he has a pulse on this team now. He's comfortable with what he's doing, and he's comfortable with what everybody else is doing as well. And it's so clear to me the way he's playing this game.
You know what we saw in this game, guys, in my opinion? This was the most confident, and we've seen Notre Dame on both sides of the ball.
Right. Exactly.
And the offense, and Trevor, you and I talked about it. We said this week, they are on the verge of becoming a really confident offensive football team. And they're kind of like this with, I mean, they were not super confident early against Georgia Tech. They got hot, and then as soon as something kind of went bad, you know, they kind of went into a little bit of a shell. We saw that against Louisville, you know, where they dominated early, and then something bad happened and went into a little bit of a shell. Today, we saw them just kind of, you know, they have that punt and they don't convert, or they miss the field goal, and you know, you kind of have that drive stall on a short field, and you just kind of they pan to Riley Leonard, and he's just kind of on the bench, just kind of like this, you know,
like he's just hanging.
I mean? And there was no look of like, you know, panic, and then Navy goes down and scores, and then they come right back. This was, and even the defense, and again, I'll break it down and explain to you why I don't think the defense necessarily played all that well today. They didn't play bad. They didn't play all that well. But they kept playing confidently. Mm-hmm. And so when they needed to make a play, they made plays. I mean, this is a team that coming into this game, fellas, and we'll get more to the defense later, was literally a perfect 23 of 23 in the red zone coming into this game. They won 1 of 3. So it's like, yeah, you gave ground, you gave up too many big plays, you did this, but when you needed to step up and make a play, you stepped up and made a play because they are confident in themselves. So it's like, okay, we gave up a big play, whatever. We're going to buckle down and we'll be fine. You know what I mean? And we've seen the defense kind of play that way for about a month now with that kind of they give up a play and it doesn't shake them. They just come back the next series and make a play. It doesn't shake them. They don't get down. Things don't snowball on them. We're seeing the offense get to that point now too, guys. And that was so obviously and again, it wasn't perfect for the offense. They had the missed field goal drive where they kind of had some missed opportunities. You know, you had some other times late in the first half, you have another chance to really put the game like way even more out of reach than you already did. And you kind of can't capitalize. You have some penalties. You kick the field goal, and then they just come out of the second half like, all right, fellas, we're good. Let's just go down the field and score another touchdown. You know what I mean? Like there was a confidence with this football team.
Right.
And there's a togetherness. Like people would point out earlier in the season, like guys would score touchdowns and not everybody runs down there. And, you know, you're seeing that today where like Jeremiah Love scores his first touchdown and the whole offensive line gets up on him and gives that, you know what I mean? And then they go like, I'm like, this is a team that is becoming this is an offense that is becoming a unit, right? Which requires just everybody to be on the same page, unification, like you got your brothers back. And I don't know that we saw that necessarily in the year. We had a bunch of guys that were still learning and trying to worry about themselves. And today you saw a football team that really believed the defense played like, hey guys, don't worry. Offense has got us. Offense is like, guys, don't worry. We got you. And that was another kind of my final takeaway just from a team standpoint, Vince, is this was a very confident football team. And we have seen a lot and that's why when Sean called me, I think it was Wednesday when you called me or Thursday, he was like, I'm real confident about this game. And I think my response was like, really? Like, really? Because I never am confident going into Navy games and they're good. Because you just, you know, it's kind of a lose-lose for you. But you saw this football team and like they were every bit as confident as some of the people that I talked to were this week. I think Vince, you and I had a conversation about like you just kind of felt good about this game this week as well. I didn't. I mean, I thought they'd win, but I thought it was going to be like, you know, I think my prediction was like 27-16.
Yeah.
You know, and they shot past that.
Yeah, I wasn't a lot higher. I had 31-17. Like I
Yeah.
wasn't a lot higher. I just figured there might be a garbage touchdown at the end, like that.
But you
kind of a thing,
told me you thought you were convinced
Yeah.
they were going to win. You didn't think it would be a
Yes.
competitive game.
Correct. Oh, absolutely.
And
100%.
the team played like that. Because Sean, you said something very important. Notre Dame has known they're the better team a lot over the last 10, 15 years, but they didn't always play like it. They didn't want to go out there and show it. And that chip that they haven't had. They had that today. They had it last week too, honestly. And they had that against Stanford, and that's been the impressive thing to see is they are starting to hit their peak. I forget which one of you guys said it in a show over the last month, but somebody said you don't want to hit your peak in September.
Exactly.
Notre Dame is going. We said 3 weeks ago how this team grows over the next 3 games going into the final bye is gonna tell us a lot about who this team is. And they went out and beat Stanford 49-7. They went on the road and beat Georgia Tech 31-13, and it wasn't that close. And they just beat a top 25 Navy team 51-14, and it wasn't that close. 2 of those 3 teams spent at least a week or 2, I believe, this season in the top 25.
Right. Yep.
So, you know, they didn't just win the last 3 games, guys. They dominated the last 3 games.
This is
They're
great
hitting their
stretch.
peak.
Yeah, this is a great stretch for Notre Dame. And that was kind of our talking point for the bye week. The first bye week, right, was okay. They've got basically 2 more stretches. Let's see how they do going from this bye week to the next bye week, which is this 3-game stretch. And they answered so many questions. They answered so many questions to me on both sides of the ball. And Brian, if you remember, we had a lot of conversation about this coaching staff and about the direction and the philosophy and all of those different things. And I'm not saying every question has been answered up to this point. Okay. I'm not saying that, but a lot of them are trending in the right direction. I'll say that. I feel confident at least in that part of it because we had a lot of questions and I like where things are going at the moment. They have another big stretch coming up here, obviously, after the next bye.
I just want to remind everybody before we wrap this up, they did all this and they've done all this without Benjamin Morrison, without Junior Jordan Patojo, without Boubacar Traore, without Charles Jagasol, without Ashton Craig. And with Jordan Faison coming in this game with like 3 catches on the season.
And Billy Stroud just came back.
Finally came back.
You know what I mean? So he's been out for a stretch too.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. First game back.
Right.
This is not and Mitch Jeter. is out. They're starting kicker who they missed a field goal, missed an extra point. And Vince is like,
today.
Getting ready to throw Dylan in the car and drive him to East Rutherford, get him ready for that one.
It's like, he can kick PETs. I know he can.
Let's go, son. Let's roll. We can get there. I don't know if we have enough time, Dad. The possessions are too short or too long. But that's the other thing too, guys, is the loss to Northern Illinois, the injuries, all the different things that happened. It's almost like it took a team that had all the ingredients, but they weren't a team early. And they've kind of realized like, hey, we are as good as we think we are, but we've got to go out and earn it every week. I think that's what the Northern Illinois game, and we talked about it kind of close to after that, is this is either going to be something that tears them apart or it's going to be the best thing to ever happen to this football team. And week by week by week by week, it is becoming more and more and more the best thing that has happened to this football team.
No.
And they, like I said, they're really hitting their stride, and they're hitting their stride at the right time.
Agreed. So that's going to do it for our gut reaction segment of the show. So make sure you hit that like button, that subscribe button, that notification bell, share with your family and friends. And of course, boards.irishbreakdown.com. You're going to see all kinds of good stuff on there. Breakdown wise in the week, video, analysis, all kinds of fun stuff. But you got to be a premium member of the board. So make sure you jump on the boards, boards.irishbreakdown.com. If you want to be in the know with everything Notre Dame, that's where you want to be. All right, fellas, let's jump into the offense. And we are going to dive a little bit deeper offensively. I don't know that they could have played a whole lot better offensively. I mean, when you look at the way that this game went and you look at the drives that they had, the drives that the first team offense was involved in, they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 drives that they were involved in. 6 were scores. 1 was a missed field goal, and then 1 was a 3-and-out for a punt. That's pretty good. And then the second team came in, punt, touchdown, end of the game. So offensively, they did what they needed to do for sure. They looked confident. Some of the play calling was a bit uninspired at times, but overall, I liked what they did, spreading the ball around, using the width of the field, some things like that. Offensively, fellas, interested to hear what you think, and we'll go. You can give your overall thoughts on the offense specifically, and then we can jump position by position, talk about what we saw, and kind of go from there. So, Trevor, your thoughts on the offense. Let's get you a little involved here. Offensively, how did this Notre Dame team look to you?
Yeah, I talked about it in gut reactions, but we talked all week about the preparation and what Al Golden was going to do to prepare the defense for this dynamic offense. And I think it got overshadowed a little bit of what Mike Denbrock was going to do to game plan and get his offense going. And I think he did a fantastic job of breaking tendencies. I think he did a fantastic job of using pre-snap motion. I think Riley Leonard and Mike Denbrock did a better job of switching protections today. Sean mentioned last week that there were a couple free rushers where it's like it's kind of on the quarterback. It's also kind of on the offensive coordinator to make sure that people are in the right position. I think they did a good job of pass protection today. I mentioned it earlier this week is through the first drive of the Stanford game and the first 2 drives of the Georgia Tech game. Riley Leonard went 3 of 4 for like 27 yards. And I think 3 of the completions went all to Bo Collins. And the first completion today was to Chris Mitchell. And then the next completion was to Mitchell Evans. And it's just, you put yourself in a situation where, like, if I can notice that sitting on my couch and sitting in front of my laptop, you have to imagine that other defensive coordinators who are game planning and scheming against you are going to pick up on those tendencies as well, right? So I thought they did a really good job of getting different receivers involved early today. I think the receivers played one of their best games of the season in terms of route running, blocking downfield. Jeremiah Love, I'd said it all week. I just had a feeling that this was going to be a breakout game for him. He was held to 2.6 yards per carry against Georgia Tech. He was held to 3.1 against Stanford. And Navy is a good football team. They are scrappy. They tackle well. But when you just look at the scales athletically, it is tipped very heavily in the favor of Notre Dame. And one of the most athletic people on their entire football team is Jeremiah Love. And it just, to me, all week, it just felt like, you know what? This is just a game where I think he kind of responds from his, I don't even want to call it lackluster because he still had 93 total yards of offense to himself against Georgia Tech. But to his standard, I would believe would be considered, a little lackluster. And the dude today went for 102 yards and 2 touchdowns. So overall, the offense played really well. Riley Leonard played his best game in a Notre Dame uniform today. I mean, he was dealing that thing today, man. I mean,
well, and to your point, Trevor, he went 7 for 7 to start the game to 7 different receivers. I mean, that's a pretty cool stat if you ask me. I mean, he's obviously moving the ball around, working his way through the through the play, through the offense. He knows what he wants to see, and he's seeing it. So didn't mean to interrupt, but I thought that kind of highlighted what you were talking about.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, he had 200, like I've said all year, Riley Leonard is a quarterback that you have to pay attention to total output. And even if you just look at it through a passing lens, he played a really good game today. Yes, there's things that you could nitpick. Well, he missed that one guy there for an incompletion, 100%.
Right.
Find me a quarterback at the end of today, at the end of Saturday in college that goes 25 of 25. It's just, as much as it would be awesome to watch a quarterback have 100% completion percentage, it's not a reality.
Yeah.
I did that last night on NCAA 25.
Well, I mean,
I was playing on rookie mode, but
go.
Who'd you play against?
I didn't actually do that.
I was about to say,
Brian, I was kind of like saying like real life. We're talking real life here, not video games.
Oh yeah. No, I hear you, man. I mean, it's just he ended the day 13 to 21 for 178 yards, 2 passing touchdowns, 83 yards on the ground, and 1 rushing touchdown.
2 throwaways and a drop. Also, keep that in mind. 2 balls.
One was a
2 of his
2
2 of his incompletions were throwaways, and then he had a drop.
He was decisive with mostly everything that he did today. There was no second guessing on throws. There were no kind of double pumping. When he made the decision to run, he went. I mean, even it was to the level of confidence today where Notre Dame, we talked about it. We've been talking about it for a while, that they were a very rhythm-based offense. And the second that there's a penalty or a negative play, it's like, the drive's basically over.
Right.
And there were a couple of third down situations where, it was an illegal formation or there was a false start or something that moved you back and got you back behind the chains, and you're going from a 3rd and 3 to a 3rd and 8. Riley Leonard was very decisive with his legs, and there was times where I was sitting on the couch. It's like, that's why he's quarterback 1 right now. That's why he's here. So really good day today from Riley Leonard. The wide receivers, like I said, I think this was their best game of the season from a route running perspective. I thought that they were very intentional with what they were doing today. And then I think the offensive line played well. But overall, man, this was the most cohesive unit, the most cohesive game that Notre Dame's offense has played this season. Because, they hung 66 on Purdue. It was very, very, very run heavy. So this was a very balanced game. It was a very cohesive game as a unit in both phases of the offense. So extremely happy with what I saw today.
Sean, you're up. Thoughts on the offense?
They did 3 things that I thought were paramount going into this game. They had to be physical because they're the more physical team, and they had to make Navy feel them early. They had to start fast, right? They had to make Navy play a different game that they've been used to all year, which is teams chasing them. They did that. And then they had clean process. They did those 3 things, and then their talent just took over. So even though we sit back and say, well, they really only had 1 forced turnover. Yeah, but they felt Notre Dame. See, Notre Dame was almost there. Junior was coming. Junior, if he doesn't lose the ball, it's probably going to be an incompletion, a batted ball, possible interception. Junior Tulamaka was coming around the edge when Jalen Sneed recovered the ball in the end zone and Horvath lost it. It was like they felt Notre Dame. Horvath, for the first time, walks on the field saying, uh-oh, man, they're running up and down the field on us, guys. Everything was a little bit more rushed for Navy today. You could just feel that they knew offensively they had to be near perfect. And things you did not see, special teams offensively losing balls, fumbles, miscues, penalties that they have not done all year. They did it because I feel like they felt Notre Dame's presence. They felt their physicality, and I think they felt the pressure of knowing they had to be perfect. They had to be perfect. They were a perfect, undefeated football team playing the way they played, and they knew the way they played all year wouldn't be good enough to beat Notre Dame. They had to take it to another level. I don't think they had another level. And I think that put a lot of pressure on them, and we saw mistakes. But offensively for Notre Dame, for me, I'm so extremely proud of this offensive line today. I really am. I think they took the challenge to set the tone. They were physical. The first drive, the way they went down and scored, very important. Very important. Then the fourth touchdown, you get backed up, questionable call against Emil Wagner, great pass to Faison taken away. You get backed up, second and long, you shorten it to third, medium, and then you convert. And then from there, you stick it in the end zone, you take it back to a 21-point lead, you add the field goal going into halftime, you pretty much crush any chance of Navy feeling like they're back in the game. They come out and they score. But like Brian pointed out, you come right back down and dash those holes.
Again. Yeah,
it's like, dude, they just never gave Navy any hope. That's what you're supposed to do when you're the better team. Make them feel it early, and then don't give them a glimmer of hope and keep your foot on their neck. And that's what they did offensively. Tim Brock was great. Riley Leonard was great. Offensive line was much better. The blitz pickup. I felt like Navy came into this game also defensively from a schematic standpoint, doing things that they didn't do. You saw them get confused on the switch on the Chris Mitchell touchdown, right? They let Chris Mitchell loose, Jay on the switch route. They basically motioned into stack. The two DBs got confused. Chris Mitchell was wide open. They were switching from 4-man fronts to 3-man fronts, disguising blitzes, trying to do things to upset Notre Dame's offensive line and really try to take advantage of that offensive line, which for me, having that veteran next to Anthony Knapp and all of the switches that were working against him and Pendleton, they weren't working for Navy. They gave clean pockets. The running backs did a great job of picking up blitzes. I think maybe they missed a couple. I think Jadarian missed one where he leaked out, where he probably should have slid over to the right, but it still ended up being a positive play for Notre Dame. He missed one. He kind of did a lazy block. They got a holding call when Angeli got sacked, But that's nitpicking. But other than that, I saw that laugh, Brian. But no, other than that, guys, it was, there's a lot offensively to be happy about with the process, the way they went about their business. And if they continue to do that, right? Like you said, we can nitpick. Eli Raridan dropped the ball. I think Faison dropped the ball on the end cut. It was a little low, but he still should have been able to bring that in. I mean, things like that, they can clean those things up. But other than that, offensive line played much better. Running backs, what do you want me to say? Our fourth-string running back comes in, looks like a bull in a China store. It's like, this is the talent that exists on this team. And offensively, they're really just starting to scratch the surface. Trevor talks about it. If you give Riley Leonard, you get him comfortable, which they have done in the passing game, right? And you allow his total game to impact the offense the way it can, you see the benefit in the ceiling of the offense because of the special talent that he has, right? And that really won't be tested into the playoffs. I said that the worth of Riley Leonard will not be truly tested into the playoff. I felt that. I knew if Riley Leonard plays his game, there was no one on the schedule that could do anything with Notre Dame. Like, the regular season was never going to prove anything. We thought USC might be a tough one, and Florida State, but they're really not going to be tested based upon what they've shown this season. So offensively, guys, November is going to be probably a season where they're really going to dominate offensively. And then the defense can kind of just, I don't want to say relax, but they could kind of not feel like every game, man, we have to scoop and score. We have to find a way to put 10 points on the board. Now, if they do put points on the board, it's just an addition. So now, instead of being in the 30s and blowing teams out by 15, 16, they're going to be blowing teams out consistently by 20, 30 points. If this offense is playing the way they're playing. I think, and everyone's happy. That's one thing. Everybody looks extremely happy. The tight ends look like, okay, we know what we're going to do. we're going to play our role. We're going to be in the passing game in this way. Good. Wide receivers know we're going to spread it out. Everybody's going to get 5 looks, maybe 2 or 3 receptions, make your plays, run out the catch, things of that nature. The only other thing I want to see the timing on the screen game. Get a little bit crisper. That's it. Because the screen game was definitely there today with the zone blitzes that Navy tried to bring. If they could have hit 1 or 2, it could have been bigger. Wide receivers need to block a little better on those as well, because some guys are coming through a little bit cleaner than they should. But once again, now I'm getting into nitpicking, man. What do you want me to say? Dude, the offense was really good today. They were spearheaded by Jeremiah Love. Their best 2 players led the way. Jeremiah Love and Riley Leonard. When you get those 2 guys playing at a high level, the sky's the limit for this offense, man. It really is.
Brian, thoughts on the offense overall?
Yeah, so I'll actually stick to kind of my overall thoughts to the offense, and I'll be honest with you, I was the interesting thing, guys, is I don't think the offense really played like that perfect game. Like, I'll bet you $100 Mike Denbrock sitting in the office looking at, man, we got to pick that up. We got to get better movement there. We got to do this. We got to do that. And that's a good thing. This was not like this, guys, everything was clicking. Nothing went wrong.
Right.
But what I liked is you kind of came out early, and Vince, and one of the things that you and I have talked a lot about is you've got to find ways to attack the perimeter quickly. First play of the game, they run a now screen, right? First play of the game. Don't get a ton, 4 yards, but you set a tone early, like, look, you can't load the box. We're going to go right outside of you. Next play of the game, they drop back and throw. They run a crossing route. They hit 2 over routes in this game. They hit a deep in this game, got dropped. Like things that Trevor, you and I literally, or no, Vince, was it you and I in the post-game show this weekend where I'm like drawing up, like, you got a seam route, got a deep in. How are you not running this route? Give them time. And they were running that stuff and hitting that stuff. So a lot of the things we've been like begging to see more of the offense, like, man, why are you not using more pre-snap movement? They were doing a ton of that today. Like the touchdown pass, people will say, well, man, Notre Dame never gets guys wide open. Like, look at Chris Mitchell. It's the easiest touchdown Chris Mitchell's ever caught in his life.
Oh, my goodness.
Right? And it was off of a quick zip motion and a post-snap switch, and Navy wasn't sure how to respond to it. You're seeing Mike Denbrock get more and more and more comfortable knowing what his personnel is. That's what we're seeing in recent weeks,
completely
guys.
Agree with that.
He is so much more comfortable in what Riley does well, what Riley's good at. What can my receivers do well? There was aggressiveness today, but not unnecessary aggressiveness today. Look, I think the offense got in way too many 3rd down situations because there was a lot of mistakes that were made. You look at that first drive of the game, they get a nice 4-yard gain, nice 13-yard gain, 4-yard gain on first down, and then boom, -1 because they had a mistake on a twist, right? So then you get into a 3rd and 6. You're like, well, here we go. Notre Dame sucks on 3rd down, and they run a great route. Just great route by Jaden Greathouse and get the big play. And it was an aggressive play call. It was not a let's run to the sticks, which they've done all year, and let's just move it. It was, hey, we know they're going to bring pressure here on 3rd down. Let's attack them and be aggressive with it. Right. And they ran a route where it's either Greathouse on the post or it's going to be a deep end behind it to Chris Mitchell. There was an aggressiveness to Mike Denbrock's play calling this week that we saw a little bit of last week as well, that we saw against Stanford, where you can tell he's really getting comfortable with his personnel. He's really getting comfortable with what they're seeing. And so, I think that led to a lot of the success they had, guys. And there was a sequence too. Let me find the drive that it was. So you had, I'm trying to remember what drive it was, but they had a drive. So they had a 3rd and 9 where they got stopped, and you had the drop by Jordan Faison on first down. You got stuffed at the line of scrimmage. You run a 3rd and 9. It gets bad and almost get it picked off. You punt, and it's 21-7, and you're like, that was a sloppy series, And Trevor, you and I talked about this last week. We saw it against Georgia Tech. No, Vince, you and I did on Sunday. We talked about it against Georgia Tech. It also happened against Louisville, where when something went wrong, they started they'd get out of their rhythm, and then they would just kind of stay that way. So they fumble the ball. Notre Dame gets it back, and that first play, get a hold on Emil Wagner. And you're like, okay, here they are. They're in that rut. They started well, but they're in that rut. They can't get out of their own way. And the very next play, they run a tunnel screen. they have a incompletion, but then they get into 3rd and 15. And they had a 3rd down play last week where I thought, man, if he just checks the ball down, they got a little something going there. And that's exactly what he did. Marcus Freeman allows him to go for it. They run a deep in cut. Again, it was 4th and 7, and they ran downfield routes. You don't do that, guys, if you are like, I don't think they can protect the quarterback. And I don't know if the quarterback can read the defense. And so you don't make that call. Mike Denbrock does not make that call a month ago. There's no way. He's doing something where it's Jaden Thomas running some sort of pivot route where you're hoping Jaden goes and wins, and which he's done all year. That showed me something, guys. That aggressiveness right there showed me something. That's the sign of an offensive coordinator that's a lot more comfortable with his football team. And then by Marcus Freeman, when they got the ball back at the end, it's 28-7. He could have easily said, hey, guys, let's just run it out of here. Let's get it out of here. And they come on that last drive, and the first play, they run a play-action shot down the field. Like, that tells me something about Mike Denbrock. It's also telling me something that maybe Marcus Freeman's starting to get a little bit more confident in his offense as well, because, again, you're up 28-7. This is a team that forces a lot of turnovers. Don't take a chance doing something there that could maybe let them get back in the game. But first play, shot down the field. And that level of aggressiveness, Vince, is something I was very excited to see.
Yeah, and I want to say this too, because we've seen Marcus Freeman have confidence in his offense before last year. Because remember at the beginning,
not
of
in
the
big
season,
games against teams that sucked, he would. But yes,
and that's what I'm saying. So like he had confidence in his offense, was calling timeouts, trying to get him the ball back at the end of half scenarios, and doing all of these different things. And then that went away as the season went on because he had less and less confidence in what the offense was able to do. Following
basically the playing better teams.
Yeah, right. Well, those two things obviously coincide with each other.
Right. But this is not that, Vince. This is not a crap team.
And now Marcus Freeman, he didn't have a ton of confidence in this offense early on in the year. And he was calling timeouts and calling his games with that in mind, right? We have seen a visible shift in his thought process when it comes to his offense, just points on the board.
Let Denbrock do his thing, man. Yeah. That's the thing. He just let him do his thing. Right. And Freeman, it looks like Coach Freeman's doing that.
Yeah, finally.
He's not doing that just because he's confident in Mike Denbrock. He's confident in Mike Denbrock. We know that because he gave him over $2 million to come be his offensive coordinator. But now you're in games, it's like, let him cook. And you're starting to see that more and more and more in these games, guys. And I think that's a great sign. But it's a sign of it's been earned. That trust has been steadily earned over the last month. And that's what I was like to see. So you saw great 3rd down offense today, fellas. You saw good 4th down offense, great 4th down offense today. You saw an offense overcome adversity. You saw an offense that didn't allow itself to get into a funk. There were multiple opportunities for this offense to get into the funks that they've got into in past games, when the missed field goal, the 3-and-out that almost had an interception. You know, you're starting to they got a little bit out of rhythm for a couple drives, the missed field goal drive, then the 3-and-out. But then when you got that second opportunity, you get that holding penalty. That was the chance for them to say, here we go again. But they didn't. They came right back. There was and you could see it in their body language. Like Emil wasn't like, oh, head down. He just walked back, go do your job, next play. Riley's like, don't worry about it. You could see, and it's just right next play. Boom, they get it right back, and it just, there was just that confidence that they had, because if your head coach is confident in you and your offensive coordinator is confident in you, you're going to know that by how many opportunities they give you to go make plays in the game. And they weren't giving them those opportunities early because they didn't have confidence, and the players knew they didn't have confidence, and their confidence was shook. The last couple of weeks, but especially today, we saw a head coach that was showing confidence in his offense. We saw an offensive coordinator that's showing confidence in his players that they can execute it. He's more comfortable with knowing what to call now that he's got multiple games under his belt. And then the players, we got an election coming up here, right? It's a little trickle down confidence. The last, you know what I mean? It starts at the top, goes down, and then it goes into the players, and now everybody's confident, right? So that's something that you talk about the offense as a whole, guys. That's so important because Sean, that's process is important and all that kind of stuff. But this is at the heart of that. The process works because you're confident top down that everybody knows what they're going to do. And we'll talk more about Riley and the O-line a little bit, but here, just as an example of it, we've never seen Riley Leonard move in the pocket with the way he did today without thinking, I'm going to take off running. He did at times, But there were times where he was moving to buy time to let routes get open, and then he's hitting them. He doesn't do that 3 weeks ago because he didn't have the confidence in the guys in front of him to give him the time to do it. And so you're just seeing that, and you're seeing down receivers downfield. Hey, when Riley takes off, turn around and get a body on somebody because this cat's going to put in some work. So you're finally seeing a group of players that believe in each other. And I love it. Jordan Faison has a bad drop. I think they targeted him on 3 of the next 4 passes. Like, you know what I mean? Like actually, I'm gonna go back and look at that because he had to drop on the 3 and out. Right, as the beginning of that drive, he has a drop on a 3 and out. They run a tunnel screen, gets broken up. So the first play after the fumble, they throw a deep out cut to Jordan Faison, and then the next play they throw him a tunnel screen. Then they had the check down to Aeneas Williams, and then they went right back to him on a deep end cut. So, like, he drops the ball. What does Riley Leonard do? Goes right back to him 3 times on that very drive. That's something where the receivers are like, you know what? Q's got me. Q's got me. Let me go get him. Let me go do this work for him. And that's what you're starting to see from this team, guys, is it's not like it didn't look like they were always felt this way early in the season. And I thought that's just another sign that this offense is really starting to cook, really starting to get in its comfort zone as you head into this last month of the season.
They're getting healthy as well. And
mentally,
especially. They're getting mentally healthy, but they're getting Jordan Faison back means something. When you can put him and Chris Mitchell on the field at the same time, that's a lot of pressure on the safeties.
Billy
Shroud coming back, what he does and how he helped Anthony Knapp in this game. There are a lot of things. They're getting healthy. They're getting healthy on the offensive side of the ball. They've gone through things starting in fall camp, leading into the season. If they can stay healthy on the offensive side of the ball, especially in the trenches, they got Cooper Flanagan came back. They're just getting healthy offensively, mentally. They're starting to find out who they are, get that identity, play into it, and become confident in it. It's one thing to know your identity, but you have to have success consistently over and over again to grow in that confidence. And they're starting to do that. And I think they're going to continue to do that next week going into the bye. And it's all about, sprint to the finish for November. But this offense is going to be, the offense could literally, this offense meeting the defense going into November, that's going to be extremely fun to watch. If that's what they do. If that's what they do, it's going to be fun to watch.
You could argue that in 2 of the last 3 games, the offense has significantly outplayed the defense. I would make that argument against Stanford, and I would make that argument in this game. I thought last week they both had their moments of not being great and both had their moments of being pretty good, and it was a good team win. But I think Stanford, I thought the offense absolutely played better than defense did. And I think in this game, I think the offense absolutely played better than defense did. That's a scary – I mean, Trevor, how many times have you and I been talking about this? Look, offense just has to do its job, and this defense is really good. And, now the offense is cooking? Like, really?
Look, I mean, overview of the offense, it's a group of guys that bet on themselves. I mean, they were the most scrutinized part of this football team really up until the Louisville game. Like the Louisville game, that 3 touchdown first quarter is what kind of started to change the narrative of, I mean, even some of us at Irish Breakdown, we're talking about, I mean, as long as the offense can just score some points, the defense is
just get 21. Get 21. They'll win a lot of these games.
You're never going to lose.
Right. Like,
seriously, if they would have scored 21 points, they would have won every game except for 1 this year. Just with 17 points would have them 6-1 right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's an offensive group of guys that came together and they bet on themselves. They're like, hey, we're not where we want to be yet. It's going to be patient. Plus, you have to add the injuries on top of it. We have to develop now with one of our best run after the catch guys in Jordan Faison with half an ankle for 4 weeks. Then you don't have your left tackle and you don't have your starting center. Argument could be made he's the leader of that offensive line. Billy Shroud goes out with an injury. Mitchell Evans is working back off of an injury. And it's a group of guys that
Cooper Flanagan went down and missed multiple games.
Yep, Cooper Flanagan went down. And it was just one of those things where they could have fallen victim to that narrative of, well, I guess we just aren't what
Woe
we
is
thought we were
us.
going to be. And
Poor
I mean,
us.
you see it with other teams in college football. They're just like, we're not there yet. I guess we won't be there for the rest of the season. And they did a really, really tremendous job of staying together as a unit, saying like, we know where we can be. And there's been signs every single week of like, we see a little bit more open up. It's not a lot, right? Like it's not like there is still yet to be a performance where just the doors are blown open. And it's like, all right, now we're talking about this offense can put points up on any defense in the country, right? Like it's not there yet.
I think today was the closest they've been to that against a good opponent. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But it would have been so easy for this offense to say, well, Riley's not what we thought. 3 of our 5 starting offensive linemen are injured. We'll just hope we win every game 17-10 and then just see where we're at come playoff time. And now they've put us as people who break down and analyze the team and everybody is fans in a position where it's like, yo, if this offense continues to trend up, and if they play the rest of the games like they just played on offense today, 1, they're running the table the rest of the season, and 2, it won't be close. Like it just won't be close, right? So
if the offense plays all the rest of the regular season like they have during this between bye break, they won't play a competitive game. I mean, I'm watching the USC Rutgers game last night. I'm thinking Notre Dame is going to eat on this defense.
Man.
They're just going to absolutely feast on this defense, man. Like it is.
But to go to both of your points, I think what we see is a must for this team. If we're talking about prosperity in the playoffs, the offense moving towards that direction is a must, right? Because eventually, we're hoping and praying that there are no more injuries on the defense and they can just hold serve per se from a health standpoint defensively. But that defense, they only play 56 snaps today, but at some point, that's helping. 56 snaps today, that's helping.
Huge.
And and if you can lessen that over the course of the rest of the season, and they're only playing 50
Sean,
to 60 snaps.
How many plays did they play on their last drive? Because I believe their last 2 drives were against the backup defense, correct?
Yeah.
So not only was it 56 plays, but you at least had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I believe. Yeah, I mean, you had several of these. No, actually, that's third quarter. What was their last drive of the game? They had 3 and out, and then that drive. So, I mean, I think their last 2 drives, if I remember correctly, I saw a lot of number 2s on the field. So even then, it wasn't even a full game. But here's the thing, guys. When you look at this performance, the defense is. We've talked about this. The defense is not. Like the defense is playing well, but they aren't playing necessarily lights out today because they're constantly having to put new people in the starting lineup. The fact that the offense is, because, hey, guys, we got you, I think takes a lot of pressure off that defense and lets those young guys just go play. And so the results are actually still really good, even though if you break the film down as a coach, you see that there's a lot of mistakes happening, but they're just flying to the ball because there's not that same – you can see it on defense. There's not that same pressure that they've had to put on themselves in the past, in my opinion, and that they even put on themselves at the beginning of the year. Because I do think, as I said, they're starting to come together more as a team. So that's kind of my big takeaway from the offense.
Let's jump into this a little bit more specifically. And you guys kind of touched on some specific positions and some things like that. So if you've already kind of given your thoughts, then that's cool. But I want to we'll go front to back. Let's start with the offensive line, because I think a very underrated situation here with offensive line was the return of Billy Schrouth and the way that they decided to bring him back. I think that
we talked about this.
Yeah, that needs to be talked about, because he was playing right guard before. And when he got hurt, Rocco Spindler comes in, he's playing right guard, right? Rocco has been a little up and down, but I think overall he's played pretty well coming in as a backup, etc. Sam Pendleton, look, I'm not going to knock Sam Pendleton because he's a young kid and
he was swimming a little bit mentally,
exactly.
guys. You could see
100%.
it. He was just a little bit overwhelmed.
So
mentally. He'll be okay.
We were kind of talking to each other, and we would throw it out there and like, okay, well, what are they going to do when Billy Strouth is healthy again? Is he just going to be reinserted at right guard? Do they then move Rocco over to left guard? You know, like what are they going to do? They decided to put Billy Strouth in at left guard, leave Rocco at right guard where he's having some success. You take out the young kid who is swimming a little bit, and you put in arguably your best offensive lineman who's now back from injury. You put him in at left guard. Guys, without going back and looking at the film yet, because I do like to reserve a little bit of judgment when it comes to the offensive line from watching on the TV copy. Offensive line as a unit, I think, look better today than they have in the past few weeks. And I think a lot of that has to do with bringing Billy Strouth back and putting him at left guard.
Let me just say this. First of all, this is what they should have done at the beginning of the season. With all due respect to Sam, even if you were going to start Sam Pendleton, fine, start Sam Pendleton. Sam Pendleton should have been at right guard. Anthony Knapp should not have had a freaking redshirt freshman next to him this entire season. You're hurting yourself up for true failure. Freshman, and now you're putting a guy that has just as much experience as a true freshman has at that left guard. And so I think this was good. I'll say this about the offensive line. It was another game of them playing hard. And it was a game where they didn't play great today, in my opinion. When you break down, like, were they assignment correct? Did they get, they didn't get a great push in the run game. Part of that was Navy was putting a lot towards the run game. There were some run throughs that they allowed in the pass pro. But here's the thing. You allow a run through because somebody didn't get what they needed to get to, whether it was a lineman or a back, but everybody else had a body on a body, and Riley can just slide step it, take off running, or slide step it, throw a ball over the middle. You weren't having the push. So like there were some things like for first drive of the game, Anthony Knapp, you saw the play where Billy Strouth like hits a guy and then passes it off, and people are like, oh, I had a buddy of mine text me. He's like, that was a bad job. No, that was actually what Billy Strouth was supposed to do. Anthony Knapp turned out instead of turning in, and then that allows a -1, right? And so there were plays like that in this game. There was a play where Pat Coogan hits a guy, stops his feet, the guy gets off and makes a stop. There was way too many of those not big. Like you look at Jeremiah Love, great performance, right? 13 carries, 102 yards. He had 64 yards on one carry. That means, or 12 carries. He had 64 yards on one carry. That means he had 38 yards on 11 other carries. Jadarian Price had 5 carries on 19 yards. I mean, they ran for 265 yards today. Keedron Young ran for 52 as with the backups. And then Riley Leonard had 83. A lot of that was on scrambles. They didn't play great today, and they ran for 265 yards. But here's the thing that I like, guys. There was a couple run throughs because I thought Navy was doing some of their exotic stuff. The offensive line pass pro has gotten better the last couple weeks, but you're like, Stanford sucks at rushing the quarterback. Georgia Tech sucks at rushing the quarterback. Navy's actually a pretty decent team at getting after the quarterback. Trevor, I think, what were they, 15th or something like that in sacks coming into this game? And they do a lot of exotic stuff. So, yeah, they got a couple run-throughs, but overall, in pass pro, this is the most comfortable Riley Leonard has looked all season. Why? Because he was more confident that they were going to give him the time to throw. I thought Anthony Knapp had his best pass pro game of the season. Any pressure they got was primarily from the right side, which as a quarterback, I'm a right-handed quarterback. Trevor, you're a right-handed quarterback, I believe. I would much rather pressure come to my chest side than my back side, because I can see that. And then you saw Riley just step aside, throw the ball down the field. And he was so much more comfortable in the pocket because whenever he was getting pressured, it was like one guy, but I thought overall, the pass protection was as good as it's been relative to the quality of the opposition when it comes to getting after the quarterback. Georgia Tech's not very good. Georgia Tech is geared towards stopping the run. Stanford is geared towards stopping the run. Navy's geared towards disruptions. That's what their defense is geared towards, is they know they're not real big. They know they're not super athletic, but they know they're really smart. And so they're a team that's going to come out and say, hey, we're going to try to create a lot of negatives against you today, and we're going to try to really get after you. And so that's why Navy came into this game averaging over six tackles for loss per game. They came into this game 34th in the country in sacks. They had 15 in 6 games, averaging 2.5 per game. and Riley got sacked once, and it was a play where he was like literally in the pocket for 5 or 6 seconds before he finally got sacked. You know what I mean? So it was a coverage sack, and the quarterback needs to take the check down on that. He should have dumped it off to Devin Ford.
Right, or bail.
That wasn't a sack on the offensive line.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so I thought that them giving time to throw, but even was huge in this game. But even with the fact that they had a lot of not great, the efficiency numbers in the run game are not going to be very good today. Let's just prepare yourselves for that. It's not going to be very good today. But they kept battling and they kept battling and they kept battling. And then that one time they catch Navy in a stunt and they were able to get inside of it, they go for 64. And it was a body on a body. They played with confidence today, fellas. That's really the thing I come down to. They played aggressively. They still got to move their feet better, right? There was still a little bit too much of that at center and right guard today. But, I thought Rocco played his most – I mean, he was handling twists and moving his feet, and I thought Billy looked rusty but good. I thought Anthony Knapp had some issues with twists a couple times, but overall was good today. I thought Emil was solid. I thought that holding penalty, I have to go look at it again. I didn't see a hold there.
Yeah, it looked garbage to me.
But he was so it just was a good 5 guys playing together,
right?
Playing quality football against a really aggressive front 7.
And and they threw a lot of stuff at the offensive line. They wanted to take advantage, because if you watch film of Notre Dame so far this season, twists and stunts and movement, it has gotten to this offensive line, right? More times than not, it feels like. Yeah. And so they threw everything at the kitchen sink at this offensive line.
Yeah.
And overall, I think they handled it fairly well.
Relative. I mean, there was a couple times on third downs and some short yardage where Jeremiah Love got hit behind the sticks, and he just kind of said, "Nope, you're not stopping me." Right. And those things got to get cleaned up a little bit. But again, that one time that they catch them on the right call, they crease it. But there weren't a lot of negatives, though, guys. Like, they had -6 yards rushing today, Notre Dame did. They had 6 negative yards in this game. 5 of them were on a sack of Riley Leonard. So there was only 1 carry, and it was on the first drive of the game that resulted in a minus. So, yeah, they weren't dominating, ripping off 6 and 8s and 7s, but they were 2s and 3s and 4s, which allowed them to kind of stay on schedule and get them in more third manageable situations. That was, to me, very important. Very important game. So, no, I don't think the offensive line played great, but they don't have to. Just do your job. With these backs and this quarterback, you don't have to play like the 2017 O-line. You just have to do your job. And I thought that was the thing that I saw from them, is I kind of feel like they've played so underwhelming that when they do a good job, we kind of get really excited about it. But I think part of the reason we get really excited about it is because we know what this group of skilled players can do when they just do a solid job. You know what I mean? But here's the one thing I'll give them credit for. They competed today again. And for the most part, the mistakes that were made were not there was no drive killers. And that's, I mean, the only drive killing mistake they made was Steve taking a sack when the game was 44-14. You know what I mean?
True.
Like, and then they ended up getting a defensive penalty on that play.
Right.
But like, there were no drive killing mistakes, right? Like, Navy's going to get a couple minuses. I mean, I think back to 2 years ago with Joe Alt at left tackle, and Blake Fisher at right tackle, and Zeke Correll, and Harry Houston as your own line coach, who is a legend. And I remember watching what Navy was doing in the second half, and they could find no answers for that Navy pressure package. Do you know who ran that defense that day? Same dudes running the defense today. But today they had answers. Getting the ball outside. Do this, do that. But then they also had backs that one time, we're going to catch you, and we get Jeremiah Love to the second level, it's a house call. And so that's what I was pleased by, guys, to see the O-line handle pass pro the way they did today, which was not great, but good.
But it was serviceable enough.
Yeah. And when it was pretty good. I'm being a little bit extra. There was about 2 or 3 plays where I thought they allowed some run-throughs because of pressure packages. Outside of that, they were really stout in pass pro today. Like, where Riley just was like back there, like making a sandwich and, letting guys get open. But they thought they were going to be able to do that today, which is why they ran so much of that deep stuff, the deep ends, the overs, the crossers, and things like that, because Mike Denbrock, for whatever reason, went into this game saying, hey, I think these guys are going to give us time to throw the ball today. Remember we were talking last week, like they had no faith that they were going to have time to throw the football last week.
Yep. We talked about
1 week later, and all of a sudden, it's a lot cleaner, a lot crisper against a team that's even better at rushing the quarterback than the team they played last week. I think getting Billy Stroud is part of that.
Oh yeah.
But I was pleased. I mean, honestly, guys, this is what the starting guard situation should have looked like at the beginning of the year.
Mm-hmm.
It should have been Billy at left. We talked about this in the spring. Why is Billy Schrouth playing right guard? Why is he playing right guard? He needs to be at left guard next to Jagasol. And then now, and especially when Jagasol went down, he definitely needed to be at left guard. So you'd have a veteran presence there next to Anthony Knapp instead of a redshirt freshman who was swimming just as much as Anthony was. So I'm very curious to see how much Anthony Knapp develops here now over the last 4 games. Now that he's got a veteran next to him, not that Billy Schrouth has like 57 stars under his belt, but he's a 3-year player.
But he's been in the program longer,
and he started last year. And, he started the season, and
it's a different animal.
Exactly.
Do you guys think maybe the reason they had more confidence? I'm just thinking about going into fall camp. They had more confidence that Jagasol would be okay, and Emil needed more support.
Possibly
from Schrouth,
but
maybe possibly. That's what they were thinking. Charles went down in game 6. Practice 6. You know what I mean? Like that's Sean. If that was your thought process, which would make sense, and it was also that's where Billy played last year, and all that. But possibly, once Charles went down and you started that reshuffle because they were doing reshuffling because Pendleton began spring at center, they should have reshuffled by putting Billy Schrouth over at left guard. And that was my thing. But you know what? However, they got what they got.
They got remember last year. Now, yeah.
It took guys getting hurt before them to finally get guys on the field that should have been on the field. And what happened to the offensive line last month of the season? So, however it happens, they finally got the offensive line that the way that it should be now that Billy's back. Now having him at left guard, I think that's going to be huge for this offensive. And I think that's going to be huge for Anthony Knapp, in my opinion, this last month of the season, having that veteran presence next to him. And then Sam Pendleton gets to sit back, learn a little bit. Hey, Sam did some really good things this year and had some really rough moments this year. Learning experience for him. But now he gets to sit back and get ready in case his number's called somewhere else. And so, but today, man, I tell you what, this is the first time I felt like this offensive line has a chance to actually be good this season. And I don't know that I felt that also since Charles got hurt. And then when Craig and Schrouth went hurt, I'm like,
I was like, yeah,
I just need him to just be okay and just get a body on a body and just don't suck. Right. And that was literally standard. When you got Love and Price and Riley and Aeneas and Kedron and whoever else you want to put back there, just don't suck. Now, after watching that, it's like, you know what? There's work to be done, guys. But I actually now think this line can be good now that Schrouth's back and with the fact that they made the decision to move him to left guard and keep Rocco in there at right guard. You're now really experienced and veteran up the middle. And I thought today the interior guys especially did a really good job of handling all the stuff that Navy was thrown at them, and it allowed them to get 3 instead of -2. It may not seem like a big deal, but that's important when you're playing a team where you think you're going to have limited possessions. Is doing enough to get that 3 instead of -2 huge. You had I'm going to say it again, -1 yard rushing today, -6 total. 1 was on a sack, 1 negative run today. That's not bad. It helps when Jeremiah Love, twice gets first downs on plays he gets hit behind the line of scrimmage. That helps a little bit, but they're going to have that when you had a stud running back.
Trevor, thoughts on the O-line?
Yeah, Brian started to touch on it towards the end there. I think that the interior played better. I think that's why overall the pass protection was better. Last week, calling a spade, Zeke Biggers absolutely destroyed the interior of Notre Dame's offensive line. They did. And Riley Leonard was just it's hard to do gap escapes when it's coming right at your face. It is. It's hard to get balls out over the middle when you have a 6'4" guy running at you like this, right up into your face. And today they did a really good job. You see what Riley's gap escape ability is when it isn't coming dead at him. They had one come through the B gap. It was off the side. It was kind of a delayed blitz.
Yeah, I think it might have been a safety. Trevor, actually, I think it was a pressure blitz. Exactly.
Yeah. And Riley just one step up, olayed the guy, stepped up and made a play. Like it's just, I'm not saying I'm going to be okay with pressure, but if I had to choose between a safety coming through the B gap on a delayed blitz or a defensive tackle bench pressing a starting guard into the lap of the quarterback, I know which one I'm choosing, right? So, I think that the offensive line played well. I think as a unit, it was one of the best that they played as a season. And it's really promising because they didn't play a perfect game. And they hung 44 offensive points. So
I want to ask a question now, Trevor, start with you. Against a quality opponent, would you argue this is the best Notre Dame's off? Because I think the best they played all year was against Purdue, but that's partly because Purdue is just awful. But against a quality opponent, so A&M, Northern Illinois, Louisville, I think Miami, and Georgia Tech, and now this team, do you think this is the best game the offensive line has played in all facets of the game against a quality opponent this season? Would you say this is their best? Because I think I would say
it's
that
the
this
most
is
complete for sure.
Yeah.
In all phases. I mean, you gave up one negative rush play, and pass protection today I didn't think was an issue. The one sack that Riley Leonard took, it was a coverage sack.
100%.
He scanned the entire field. I mean, there was just all the guys were covered.
A couple times.
Yeah, they showed pressure.
I mean,
yeah, literally. I mean, there's not a lot that you can do. I would say, yeah. I mean, as a complete unit, when you factor in pass protection, run blocking, I would say it was their best as a unit. Yeah.
Sean, thoughts on the O-line? You want to jump in or go on to the next thing?
No, we can go on to the next because everything's been summed up. Like I said, I think I said it, when I was talking about the offense. Look, they've improved. This is one of their better games. I would say the only game I would say that, I'm sorry, man, the further I get away from that Texas A&M game, as much as we critiqued after that game, that was a tough environment against a really well-coached defensive team that can, in a front seven, that can play their tails off. And when you needed that offensive line to take the game over,
fourth quarter,
they did it. And that's a task. That's the only other assignment that I could say that might have been more impressive than anything else I've seen.
If you consider the quality of the opposition.
Absolutely.
You can make that case.
You can make that case. But other than that, nothing better than what we saw today.
Yeah.
I agree 100%.
So let's talk skill positions. I don't want to belabor the point on the offense. We're all pretty happy with the way things went, but I want to talk some skill positions, and then we'll talk quarterback to wrap things up, and then we'll give some game balls offensively. So have that in the back of your minds, fellas, when we get to the game ball section for offense. So skill positions, Trevor, I'll start with you. Wide receivers, you kind of mentioned it in your breakdown. You thought that they kind of played maybe their best game as a whole. And then, of course, the running backs and Jeremiah Love having his breakout game that you predicted, sir. So I'm going to give credit where it's due. But, even you can even talk about, pass catchers and tight ends. You know what I mean? So just the skill guys, big skill guys, whichever direction you want to go, I kind of leave it up to you. But let's talk skill position here on offense.
Yeah, the wide receivers from a route running standpoint, I think played their best game. I think it was the routes were very intentional. They were very fast. It didn't feel like that there was a handicap put on them, right? Where a few times like, all right, yeah, just go get past the sticks, just kind of see what look the defense is giving you, see what the leverage corners have on you. Today, it literally felt like Denbrock and Mike Brown were like, just go be athletes. Just go, Jaden Greathouse is one-on-one with, I think that was a safety on that post route. It was literally just like, hey, Jaden, just go do your thing, man. Go get open. And that's what it felt like today. It was great. Like that's what I've been wanting to see from this receiving core, because we heard nonstop all offseason about, this receiving room is loaded with talent. I agree, and I do believe that. But I'm also a person where I also need to see it, because at some point when you're 6 games in, it's like, they still got talent. It's like, I'm sure they do. I need to see it, and today we saw it. And I think this is going to be it's interesting, because if we're going to include big skill in this, I think this is going to be the first Notre Dame team in a while where the receivers are more of a factor in the passing game than tight ends. We are now 8 games into the season. I think the tight end room is just what it's going to be, guys, if I can just be honest with you. Like, I think Mitchell Evans, I mean, this is still now mostly erring on the side of wishful thinking because he is still coming back from the knee. But I think the tight end room is just going to be what it is. Eli Raridan is playing very up and down. Mitchell Evans getting better physically, but still not a menace in the passing game. And I don't think Cooper Flanagan was targeted once today. So it's just it's a new change of pace because I haven't seen in the Marcus Freeman tenure an offensive passing game that was reliant on their receivers going out and being athletes. And today I think they did a really good job. Faison had the drop, but this was also his first game back with like a full workload because I think he was back against Georgia Tech, but I don't think
he played like 30 snaps, but I don't think he was targeted once.
So
yeah, he was more. I think Marcus Freeman talked a little bit about it in one of his press conferences this week about he was just out there blocking and he was doing a lot of the grunt work, for lack of a better term, and they were really happy with what he was able to do last week. But he never really got rewarded with any balls.
I would say today's game plan shows that they were not actually happy with the fact he wasn't targeted last week.
Yeah.
Well, fair enough.
I know that's what he said in the press conference because he's a smart guy and he knows what to say. But I think today showed that like we got to get 6 going.
Yeah, right. I mean, it was they did a really good job of getting their playmakers into space. You know, I mean, you have Jordan Faison who averaged 13 yards a catch, Bo Collins who had 21 yards per catch, Greathouse had 1 catch for 42 yards. Mitchell Evans, even he had 2 for 25. So it's just they're doing a better job of relying on their skilled players' athletic ability to go out and make plays. And that's what we all have been asking for ad nauseum for weeks now. And we saw a little bit of it during Georgia Tech. We saw a lot of it today against Navy. Brian, to your point, they ran crossers, finally, something that we have been asking for. And
oh, man, it was beautiful.
And it's still not even anywhere close to a finished product. I think that's what the most exciting thing is I'm still not going to sit back and look at this performance and say, well, this is the best the passing game is going to be because it's not. It will continue to get better. And this is exactly what I wanted to see in this 3-game stretch until the second bye week. I'm very, very happy with how the receivers played today. I'm not going to jump into it with the running backs because I feel like I have the same conversation every single Saturday. Running backs are built different, man. And I'll just leave it at that.
They ran hard.
Mm-hmm.
Sean, thoughts on the skill guys?
Trevor touched on most of the great points. It's no strange coincidence that the O-line plays better, the quarterback plays better, and the wide receivers look better. It's like that's just the way it normally goes,
amazing,
right?
Isn't it? Chicken and the egg. Like, here we go.
There you go. There you go. So, hey, if we can continue in the trenches to play at that level, my assumption is that the wide receivers are going to continue to look better and get opportunities to get chances. If guys like Faison, Mitchell, and Bo Collins, they stay healthy, right? They're going to be open. I think Riley Leonard, in his own way, probably serious but joking somewhat when he said, they've been open all year. I just haven't thrown the ball. I think it was nuanced.
Not wrong.
He's not wrong, but he hasn't had time.
Right.
He might have felt rushed. There was a lot of things.
Are you saying, Sean, it's basically that's him being a leader, though?
Yeah.
That's him
that
saying,
be part of it. But I think that's just his personality.
The Rock. Yeah.
Riley doesn't take the one thing I can say about the kid, he's honest, and then he doesn't take everything so serious, which gives him the ability to be able to kind of like recover and build. Like, okay, let's go forward. Go to the next play. It's a great foundation for that, when you don't take life and this game that serious. That's a great foundation because look, I still have an opportunity to make things better. And to be able to come and say that and just put yourself out there like, they've been open. For whatever reason, I just haven't thrown the ball, right? I mean, throw it to them, they catch it. And I think we're going to continue to see that, but it starts with the offensive line. There's no secret about that. And I think we all knew that if that offensive line got better, that we would start to see things open up for Riley Leonard, and he would have an opportunity to improve in the passing game and be more efficient. And then you start to see his legs become more of a weapon because now it's something that plays off of the passing game. It's not something that you feel like we have to come in and get him into the game running the ball. No, we can use him in the passing game. We can allow our running backs to do what they do. And now his legs are an extra weapon on top of that, right? Now you're giving defensive coordinators even more to worry about because of the elevated play in the offensive line, spreading the ball out to your skill position guys. And like you said, Trevor, well, look, running backs are the running backs. That's the constant from a skill position standpoint. As long as they don't fumble the ball, Brian pointed out, man, Jeremiah Love ran hard.
Yeah.
I know he had the long touchdown run, but he had like a 4-yard run where it was like 3rd and 1, and they had a free blitzer or a free defender coming through, and he like evades him in the hole and like pushes the pile for another yard or two. He had some really impressive pro style runs today that showed that he's an all-around running back. Like, period. He is a really good all-around running back.
64-yard runs where you don't get touched don't necessarily impress me. That's a good run. He had to read it, and that's the stuff though, Sean. Those 2-yard gains where you had to make somebody miss in the backfield or you had to run somebody over, and there was multiple times in this game where he had to put his head down and say, "There's the first down marker. Defender's right there between me and the first down marker. Sorry, bro. It's got to be done." You know, I hate to do it to you just as much as you hate to see it done, but it's happening. So just brace yourself. And he would run them over and make the play. You know, as far as receivers, Vince, I don't have anything to add. Those guys did. I thought it's amazing when you actually let them run vertical routes, how they actually look like they're running fast and hard. Imagine that. You know what I mean? But like that route by Jaden Greathouse, when he ran that route and they hit that big play, that was my first moment where I actually took a deep breath and was like, they're going to be all right. Because again, guys, it wasn't just the big play. It was 3rd and 6. And when they didn't, when the ball was snapped and Riley Leonard didn't immediately go on a sprint out, I was like, whoa, what's happening right now? It's a drop back on 3rd down. They're not running stick routes at the line. They're like, what is going on right now? They're throwing the ball downfield on 3rd down. What is this? What is this craziness? Is this Halloween today? What is going on right now? But again, it was indicative of how this day was going to go. So I don't have a lot to add. I thought the route running was really good. Bo had a really nice release on that big go ball, but he had a nice release, and then he saw, okay, blown coverage, and he just sprinted vertically and kept his track outside. It's a good ball, reacted to it well. You talk about the drop by Faison. I hate drops as a receivers coach. But you know what I like more than I hate drops? When receivers that have drops come back and make play after play after play on the series they made the drop, which is exactly what Jordan Faison did. Because, it's kind of the series, but they had to fumble, and then that he caught 3 balls on the getting into the end zone. But the out cut, he ran a great route on the out cut. Made a really nice behind the back catch on a ball. I thought Riley put that ball where it's supposed to be. I think Jordan should have kind of settled a little bit more in that hole, but he didn't, and he made a great catch. Great house. My only complaint about receivers is Jaden, don't wait for that guy. Just outrun him. He kept he was turning around, waiting on the guy, waiting to stiff arm the guy. Just run, brother. You got to step him. Just go, baby. But outside of that, I thought Chris Mitchell played a good game. I thought the blocking was solid. There were some plays here and there, but I thought overall running backs played hard. Keedron Young's a beast. Aeneas continues to make plays whenever he gets an opportunity. I thought Devin Ford was open on a nice 3rd down check down. He worked away from the defender. Riley on the sack, actually. He should have seen that, hit that right away. But overall skill players were good. I thought they were, probably the best all around the game between the two of them. But I thought they were really good.
It looked like Navy was shocked. I'm gonna be honest, especially on the touchdown to Bo Collins. Defensive back is looking. He's like, I'm not expecting him to run deep. There's no way he's running deep. I'm looking into the backfield, and lo and behold, Bo runs right by him. And then the switch route, it looked like Navy was prepared for certain routes that they had seen all year from Notre Dame, and the fact that Notre Dame stretched the field vertically and horizontally today, because Jaden Greathouse turned. Once again, I think the defensive back, when he got turned around on that 3rd and 6, he was expecting Jaden Greathouse to go outside.
Yes.
He was expecting that. He was anticipating it.
An option route.
So, because he's like, we haven't seen this. We haven't seen them do this. Yeah. On film, he gets turned around. So I think Nate was kind of taken aback as well.
Yeah.
That Mike Denbrock was calling the plays and the routes that he called today.
I'll add one piece to the skill guys, and we touched on this a little bit during the week and on the night show, and I just really want to touch on it again because look, Jeremiah Love had a great game, breakout game, ran the ball hard. All of those things are all true, and as you guys said, it's like a broken record when we talk about the running backs and what they're able to do. Totally agree. I just love the way Jeremiah Love is one of the most willing lead blockers for a guy who is just dynamic when the football is in his hands. You know what I mean? He is one of the most willing open field blockers when Riley Leonard is running the football that I've ever seen. From a guy who should be like the focal point of an offense. You know what I mean? Like those guys aren't usually the ones who are like, hey, follow me, I'll clear the way. Like that's just not usually a thing. And I just want to highlight the fact that anytime that his number is called to be a lead blocker for Riley Leonard, or he's out on a route and Riley Leonard decides to tuck it and go, like you got to feel good when you're following number 4 because he's going to make the block for you. He's at least going to get in the way and allow you to make make a play. So I just wanted to highlight that piece of Jeremiah Love's game. Go ahead, Brian.
I remember the first time we watched this film. And I remember, Sean, you and I talked about it. So, this kid's a great athlete. He's got to learn how to play football, but he's a great athlete. And to look at his evolution now, where he's just a great football player.
Yeah.
He does the little things well. You know, he does, you know, like I loved Josh Adams as a player, but there's 3-yard gains that Josh Adams has no chance of getting 3 yards on those plays. They're just different types of backs. And I, again, love Josh Adams. He blocks, he catches the ball, he can run routes. You know, the kid, and he's not your typical elite athlete mentally, where if he doesn't get the ball on a series, he's, you know, in his feelings about it. You know, it's like the most emotion. Like when he scores touchdowns, it's like, hey, I scored, let's do this thing. The only time I see Jeremiah really get fired up is when he crushes somebody as a blocker.
Exactly.
He gets man. Like he gets more. That says something about what that kid has up here and right here.
Yeah,
because he, you know, and then when he gets his chance, he's going to go do something with it. But
yeah,
you know, last week it was Price making plays. This week it's Love. It's like I don't know how you stop it, man. I just wanted to say that before we wrap up.
Yep,
it's funny. Remember this, Brian? We were talking to Christian Gray. Remember they played each other senior year. The teams played each other. And Christian's like, yo, he catches a swing route and I'm chasing him. And he's talking to me as I'm chasing him. He's like, I'm running full speed. And he's like looking back at me and like having a conversation with me. And he's like, that just shows you how special. This is a special athlete chasing an extra special athlete.
Yeah.
And I think that just shows you the joy. He wasn't doing it to me. He knew that was his future teammate.
Right.
And he's talking to him and having fun with him, but that's the joy he plays
with. The best part, Sean, is Christian starts to gain on him, and then Jeremiah goes, whoop. It's like, I was just playing with you.
And that's why he appreciate. I love talented players that can appreciate the game and don't take it for granted. Right. And that gives them, they put effort into everything, Vince. It's like, every snap, there's no wasted snap. He's not like other skill position guys that if the ball's not coming to them, they loaf on the play. That's not this kid. He plays the game with so much passion, and he wants to do his best and be the best. He wants to be the best blocker on plays that he has to block. He just wants to be the best.
Right. He wants to win, Sean.
Yes,
the kid likes to win. I mean, it's not a coincidence that the best game of his high school career happened to be in the state championship game. It's not a coincidence. It's
right.
But Vince, I want to talk quarterback, man. Can we I talk quarterback a little bit? Everybody else got their quarterback shot because they cheated and said it at the beginning.
I know, right? I was going to let you lead this one off. And talk about Riley Leonard and what he was able to do in this game, but. You know, I like to save quarterback for last. I like to tease people because everybody wants to hear. Yeah, 100%. You know, everybody wants to hear about Riley Leonard in the quarterback position, and you can even talk about Steve Angeli if you want to. But let's talk quarterback. Okay, fair enough.
I won't.
So let's talk quarterback here, Brian. I'll let you lead it off, and your thoughts on Riley Leonard's day and what he was able to accomplish. And again, pretty much 3/4 of work, right? I mean, they were pretty much. Was it the first drive?
Well, and really a drive, and I mean it was a. I think he only had. Didn't they only have one possession in the third quarter? Let me go look here. I believe
that is accurate, but I want to pull it up. They had one drive in the third quarter, and it was a touchdown drive, and then he was out.
And so the kid played 2 quarters in a drive because they had the Navy
Right.
scored, and then they had the Navy scored first. Notre Dame answered. Then Navy had the fumble. And Notre Dame recovered, and by the time they got the ball back, they put Steve Angeli in the game. So, and on that final drive, you saw Riley get a drop pass on the 3rd and 3. And did you see what he did right after the play? Goes right up to the Eli and taps him on the helmet. You're good. You know what I mean? And then next play, they get an illegal formation. It's 3rd and 8.
3rd and 8.
And Riley scrambles for 24 yards in the next play. You saw today, guys, this is now 3 games in a row where I've said to myself, and it gets better and better each week, this is the guy we saw at Duke.
Mm-hmm.
This is the guy that we saw at Duke. This is the guy you recruited. This is the guy that you thought you were getting when you recruited in this offseason. A guy that he's not going to look like Jimmy Clausen, but he's going to make plays with his legs. He can make, or his arm. He can make reads. We saw him, go. I mean, some of those throws, the guys, the deep overs, that's not necessarily a one read throw. He's got to kind of read it out. The high-low stuff is kind of inherently a multi-read type of throw. We saw him throw with great timing. Trevor, you talked about that deep out. Or was it you or Sean that talked about that deep out cut to Jordan Faison, where it's just like, soon as Jordan hits his top end, right, you can see that was a great camera angle too. You could see it because as soon as Jordan hits that inside step, Riley's right here and the ball's coming out. And you're just like, okay, this is him as a passer. Had he played a full game, he's probably like 230 yards or so in the game. And you see a guy that they didn't even call a lot of run plays for. He rushes for 83 yards on 10 carries. He had 200 and, I'm trying to do the math in my head here real quick. That's 261 yards of offense in basically 2 quarters in a drive against a team that was set 6-0 and giving up 19 points a game coming into the game. And it was kind of effortless. It's just like, okay, here I go.
And 3 touchdowns.
Right. And 3rd downs, he's running around, scrambling, picking up yards. It's like he's a nightmare to get. This is why because I think we've talked about this, but the Notre Dame defensive staff pushed for Riley Leonard to be the guy as much as the offensive staff did, because they knew how difficult it was to prepare for that kid. Because you got everything called. You got the receivers covered. You have a free runner coming through. And it's like, dude, we can't design this play any better. We lock the receivers down. We got a blitzer coming through untouched, and he runs for 17 freaking yards. That is demoralizing as a defensive coordinator.
Exactly.
Absolutely demoralizing, because it's like, I don't know what to do now. Like, we're focusing all our attention on and the thing he did well today too, guys, is because Notre Dame in the last couple weeks has done really well with the RPO stuff. And he hit a couple RPO outcuts, but twice today he read RPO and they ran glances, and Navy did this is great coaching by Navy. Their DBs drove to the front side of the receiver to take the glance route away. And instead of trying to force a ball, Riley pumps and he takes off running and picks up positive yards. So chances where maybe there's a mistake, guy bats it up in the air, gets picked off, or it's an incomplete pass. He's feeling it now.
Right.
That's Riley feeling it. That's him playing street ball. And that's what you bring. Remember what we said earlier in the year? We were so frustrated. You brought this kid in to play street. You brought in a street baller, and you're asking him to play within structure. Let him play street ball. Today was street ball. Sometimes in street ball, Sean, look, I mean, I'm from Norfolk, Virginia. I played a lot of street ball in my life. You're out there playing, but there's still some structure to it. You're still kind of, hey, let's do this. You're still setting picks. You're still moving around, and there's always structure, but it's like, just let the kid go play sometimes. And what we're seeing from Mike Denbrock is I think he realizes I don't have to call a bunch of plays for Riley to let him do his thing in the running game. Let me spread the field in the passing game, because if they don't get right to him, he's going to do something with it. So between making good pre-snap reads, you guys said it earlier, he was decisive as a thrower. And decisive doesn't always mean hit the top of your drop and let it rip. He did that at times. But sometimes decisive is, I see this over route's about to come open. Let me buy some time and then get the ball out there. And he also had, I think, a 26-yard pass play brought back because of a penalty also. So this was like, okay, this is why you brought Riley Leonard here to Notre Dame. I mean, look, Navy doesn't have a super talented defense, right? So again, this isn't like bring on Georgia's defense or anything like that. But this is what you brought the kid here to do. This is the epitome of a Riley Leonard game. 13 of 21, 2 throwaways, 2 drops actually. So his effective pass rating today, when you take away drops and and incomplete and throwaways, he basically completed 76.5% of his throws, 13 to 17. He went 13 to 21 overall, 2 drops, 2 throwaways. He went so at 76.5% throws, 178 yards, and basically a 2+ quarters of football, 2 passing touchdowns. He ran for 83 yards, averaged 8.3 yards per carry.
And got in the end zone.
So he had 261 yards of offense on 31 plays. He averaged 8.4 yards per play every time he either threw it or ran it. You're going to win a lot of games if your quarterback's playing like that, especially when you think about the skill that he has around it. How do you defend Jeremiah Love? Navy spent so much attention on making sure Jeremiah Love didn't burn him today. He still did. But that also opened up some – I mean, Riley was getting outside with ease. Why was he getting outside with ease? Because everything they were doing was inside. They were crashing everything inside, and Riley was just getting out of the pocket and just – I mean, he's so fluid. So when he's playing like he is today – because there's the thing, the offensive line wasn't perfect. They don't have to be when you've got a kid like that back there. And he's more confident in what's around him. He spread the ball around a bunch. He's throwing the ball down the field. He's making quick RPO good decisions, even sometimes when not to throw it. When Riley Leonard's playing like this and Mike Denbrock's calling plays like this, it's a really hard team to beat. Really hard team to beat. And I don't think the defense played great, but that's because they were playing an offense that's kryptonite for young players. They're going to be back to playing more traditional offenses in future games when we know that they thrive.
Well, and I think the good part about Riley Leonard and this offense and Mike Denbrock and all of the things that you just said, we have seen now coming out of the bye week, these last 3 games, this offense is playing just completely differently. And it's because Riley Leonard is playing completely differently. And it's because Mike Denbrock is calling the games completely differently. There is a comfort factor with all of those things. And it just keeps building on each other and building on each other and building on each other. I think for the last 3 games, now they're going into another bye. I'm fascinated to find out what this is going to look like after another week off. You know what I mean? Because the offense the last 3 games is way different than what we saw in before the first bye. Color me excited about whatever they're going to show to Florida State in the night game.
It's hard not to be, buddy. I get it. It's hard not to be fired.
You know what I'm saying? So I like where this is trending offensively, and a lot of that has to do, just to bring it back, a lot of that has to do with the quarterback and what Riley Leonard is able to do, because the comfort level of Mike Denbrock with Riley Leonard and Riley Leonard with Mike Denbrock is off the charts
the O-line.
Right now. 100%. That's absolutely part of it.
You're not calling some of the plays Mike Denbrock's calling today if he didn't have some semblance of confidence that they were going to give him time to throw today.
And we talked about this last week, right? Upon further review, we talked about the fact that, look, Mike Denbrock knows what he's got, and he's calling plays based on what he's got, and they're getting the ball out quick, and they're moving it's rapid fire, it's getting the ball out, it's short throws, it's okay, Riley Leonard's comfortable. And then in 1 week, the one difference so far is that Billy Schrauth is in there, but for whatever reason, you could tell that there was confidence in the O-line and what they were able to. Maybe part of that is Navy's front. Maybe part of that is Billy Schrauth. Whatever the case may be, he absolutely was calling plays based on knowing that Riley Leonard was going to have time and that he was going to be comfortable behind the offensive line, because there were times earlier in the season where he did have some time, but he was spooked. He was seeing ghosts, you know what I mean? And for good reason, but he was seeing ghosts, right? So all of these things are kind of coming together at the same time, and now they go into another week of a bye. Just fascinated to see what comes out of that. So
can I just say that I laughed when I saw Billy Schrauth starting. I kind of laughed. Marcus Freeman's like, he's available, but we'll kind of see what he's right. He's good to go, but we'll see what kind of availability he has. I'm like, come on, bro. You guys know he was playing left tackle all week. Come on, dude. But
yeah, right. So let's quickly go around the horn. Let's give our offensive game ball to whoever you think deserves it. I think there's a lot of candidates offensively in this one, but we'll start with Trevor. Trevor, game ball for the offense.
Yeah, mine's Riley Leonard, and I don't really think that there's a whole lot of justification as to why. There's definitely other players that it could go to, but Riley Leonard played his best game in a Notre Dame uniform today. So mine's going to QB1.
Sean, what do you got?
I'm going to give mine to Jeremiah Love. I think he was absolutely spectacular. Could have gone with the O-line. Could have gone with Riley Leonard, but Trevor took Riley Leonard, so I'll go with Jeremiah Love, man. I mean, hey, you got two wonderful choices. And 10 carries. He averaged 10 yards a pop today. It's like, and like Brian said, the big run is one thing, but he had some shorter runs that were just as important, man.
Oh, yeah.
A 64-yard touchdown run was not his best run of the day.
No.
Think about that.
That was just he's fast.
His best run of the day might have gone for 4 yards.
Yeah.
Right.
It was either 3 or 4. I'm trying to remember. I think it might have been 3 or yeah.
Sean, I'm sorry. Brian, who you got for your game ball?
I'm with Trevor. I mean, Riley Leonard was special today. He bailed them out. I mean, there's a couple times they're in third down situations and stuff's not open and he takes off running and picks it up. I mean, they're not the third down offense they were today without Riley Leonard's legs. They're not the third down offense they were today without Riley Leonard's arm. And so that for that reason, he's without question he gets my game ball in this game.
Fair
enough. I'll say is there's other guys that you could look at to, Jordan Faison, how he played today, Jeremiah Love, how he played today. There's guys, Rocco Spindler for some of the things he did today in the run game. But at the end of the day, it was all coming off of how well 13 was playing.
Sure. Oh, he was the catalyst. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I was stuck between two guys, and I knew kind of where you guys. I had a feeling where you guys were going to go. I went last on purpose. I was stuck between Jordan Faison and Billy Schrouth, just because of what Billy brought to this offensive line. I reserve the right to go back and look at the film and things like that from a more specific standpoint, but the offensive line looked as a group, as a cohesive unit. I thought that they looked the best that they've looked in the last few weeks. And so I'm going to go Billy Schrouth just because of his entrance back into the lineup and kind of what he brought to the table today and how fun it was to watch this offensive line at least battle and compete and, do what they needed to do to keep this offense rolling in the right direction. So that's going to do it for our offensive look at the game. We're going to be right back with the defense. But before we do, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, that notification bell, share with your family and friends. And, of course, jump on the boards.irishbreakdown.com. There's going to be all kinds of fun stuff going up throughout the week, and that's the only place where you're going to get the kind of analysis that you come to Irish Breakdown for. You want to make sure you jump on the boards if you really want to dive into it and see what it is like, from our vantage point and breaking it all down and all of those different things. So jump on the boards.irishbreakdown.com. All right, fellas, let's talk a little bit of defense. We'll kind of we'll go around the horn. Overall thoughts on the defense. I know there's going to be it might not be as glowing as the offense was, but at the end of the day, they gave up 14 points, a few big plays and some things of that nature. But overall on the defense, Sean, why don't you hit lead off on this one?
All right, I'll go Shohei for the group. Let's see.
Well done.
I'm interested in watching the game again because we talk about the genius of Al Golden all the time and how he forces teams to do exactly what he wants them to do. And Navy has always been a methodical offense, time of possession, that wants to shorten the game. This Navy offense is explosive. Blake Horvath, I think, air yardage per attempt was something like 11.7 yards coming into the game. QBR is number 3 in the nation. And they were just putting up obscene amount of points. They were averaging over 400 yards. And I think instead of going towards that and just trying to shut that down, he forced them to operate methodical. He wanted to be methodical. I was sitting up there frustrated the first third down conversion. I'm like, why is Christian playing 10 yards off? Why did he just give that up? And it's the big picture. Al Golden is always about the big picture. Guys, we're funneling them in or putting them into the trap that we want them to walk into. And I thought it was very complimentary to what Mike Denbrock was doing as well, right? He knew that he wanted to eliminate as many big plays as he could. Because that was the way Navy was going to be able to score. Navy physically just couldn't line up drive after drive and move the ball the way they've been moving everybody else, just simply because of talent in the trenches and everything. And of course, with young players, you have some missed assignments. the completion he had on the muff snap, where he was able to scramble out and Jalen Sneed just let the kid run right by him. I mean, those are the types of things that shouldn't happen, but they happen. His two big runs, once again, Leonard Moore just showing the effort and the speed that he has to chase him down again, just like he chased down Chuck in the Louisville game. But, you know, they minimized, they did exactly what they wanted to do. They minimized the opportunities. They were locked down in the red zone. Another thing, Navy was very efficient in the red zone. I think they came away twice without points getting into the red zone. So, and then Leonard Moore with the just an absolutely incredible interception in the fourth quarter. Right? Al Golden is just he's a genius, man. I think since BMO went down with injury, he knew, look, I'm not going to ask these young guys to play as much man-to-man as we've been playing, but still we're going to find a way, big picture, to get offenses to play left-handed, if you want to use that phrase, to go away from their strength, to see if they can consistently be good at that. And back-to-back weeks, what we've seen is that teams getting to Georgia Tech turn the ball over uncharacteristically. Navy, once again, turning the ball over uncharacteristically because they were forced to do things that, you know, I really think just from a coordinator standpoint, in evaluation, it just looked like the Navy players expected a certain type of Notre Dame team, and the team they got maybe shocked them a little bit. I think they didn't know what to do once they got behind. You know, Navy's always going to play with great effort. They're not going to give up. That's a given. But they were forced to play from behind, right? And they were forced to call things. I think they were forced to go to some of their trick plays earlier, or some of the things that they had for the second half earlier.
Second drive. The reverse throwback.
Absolutely.
I mean, as soon as they did that on the second drive, I was like,
okay.
Well, that's what they do that though. I mean, that's kind of what they do. Right.
I get it, but like if you're doing that in order to get a first,
but
like,
it felt like Brian's right. They've been doing that all year, but it felt like they were emptying the clip a little bit early. You know,
and I think Sean, this is your time.
Go ahead. Yeah, no, go ahead.
I felt like, and I texted the guys this during the show, I felt like how easily Notre Dame moved down the field on them the first couple drives shook them a little bit. I think I think they started pressing a little bit.
Oh, sure.
Did you kind of feel that way too?
I said it in my
turnovers.
Yeah. And when I mentioned that, I just felt like they felt Notre Dame early, the presence, like, yo, this is not going to be our normal game. Well, we control things. And that was one of the things that had me confident. When I looked and I saw that opponents were averaging 71 plays per game against them, despite the points they were putting up, I was like, oh, man, if they give Notre Dame 71 plays in this game, they're going to have a problem because they're giving up over 400 per game. I'm like, they're going to have a problem, and they're going to have to match Notre Dame, and that's where, you know, I don't think Al Golden is just going to allow them to just make these explosive plays that they've been making against everyone else. And it frustrated me to see, because Christian Gray, he struggled, but I honestly, I think Christian Gray struggled because he wanted to play his game.
Yes.
he wanted to play his game, and he's been asked, no, sit back, don't give up the big play. And got caught in between. You could tell when he gave up the slant, he was just like, oh, man. But there was a bigger picture, and I think they played very well. I think they did, because I think we've seen most Notre Dame defenses historically use a lot of run blitzes against Navy to cause the negative plays. And
they do today.
They played just strong, fundamental assignment football, and it was just Drake Bowen said, he was like, more than anything, we just have to be more physical than them on Saturday, right? And I think ultimately that's what they did. They were just more physical, and I thought they were in position. Drake didn't have his best game. You know, he missed some opportunities for tackles for losses. I think Josh Burnham on the big run, he could have played the edge a little bit more physical and forced them back inside. I mean, just small things that you could say. But other than that, I think they followed the game plan of Al Golden, and they held that team to 14 points. I think they only averaged something like 6 yards per play, which was far below what they've been averaging this season. 5.4. Yeah.
5.4.
Yeah. So ultimately, good job. Really good job.
Trevor, defensive thoughts overall?
Going counterclockwise now?
Yeah, I'm messing with you. I'm just throwing darts at the board here, buddy. All right.
Defensively, I'm going to want to go back and watch the All-22. I mean, gut reaction from the defense, it's an interesting game because at the end of the day, you held an offense that averages 44.8 points a game to 14 points. And yes, there were turnovers, and then there were unforced, a lot of unforced errors by Navy. Let's just call it what it is. Navy fumbled the ball 5 times, and I don't think a single one of them was a strip by Notre Dame. So, but you have to take advantage of those opportunities when they came around, and the defense did, right? So it's weird because if I go and I look at the box score, and you look at Navy as a team and who their most dangerous output is on the ground game, it's Blake Horvath. And Blake Horvath went for 14 rushes for 129 yards and a touchdown. And you kind of look at some of those things and you're like, well, gosh, that's frustrating because it wasn't a secret what Navy was going to do. But then almost kind of to Sean's point, it's like, well, what is the bigger picture here? Because they give up a lot of, Navy is able to generate a lot of big plays in the passing game. And I think one of the biggest plays that they got in the passing game today was like a botched play. It was like a fumbled snap, and then Blake Horvath just picked it up, and then there was a blown coverage because I don't know if they thought the play was over or what, but it wasn't like a design drawn up like they attacked it in the seam like we had talked about all week. And so it's just interesting. Breaking down the defense, it's interesting. I think from a tackling perspective, I think they did fine. If you go back and look and see who led the team in tackles, it's no surprise to me that it was mostly guys who had seen the triple option before in this style of play. Like Jack Kaiser led the team in tackles. That makes sense because this is what feels like his 11th year facing Navy in the triple option. So, he played
1A football in Indiana, right, where he faced the triple option a lot.
Didn't he run it too?
I'm pretty sure he was the quarterback for his team who ran the triple. So, he knows triple.
Yeah, absolutely. Jalen Snead is a guy that had a really interesting game for me because there were some where he was very, very out of position, but then on the plays that he was in position, he played very well. Defense, I think it's an interesting grade for me because, again, you hold an offense that scores 44.8 points a game to 14 points. So, my gut reaction is I think they played fine. There are some areas to clean up, but then when I go and I look at the grand scheme of the season, they're only going to face this offense one more time, and they're not going to face it in the playoffs. So, yes, it's tough to say, well, they have things they need to clean up from a defensive standpoint against a team like Navy if they want to beat teams down the road. And it's like, well, you only face the triple option one more time. And there was a lot of guys playing out of their game today. Sean brought up hey, Christian Gray was a guy that wasn't really able to let loose and play his game today. So, I think overall the defense played fine. I'm never going to be upset when the defense holds an offense that scores that many points a game to 14.
Brian?
I didn't think there's levels, right? I think some people, when you say the defense didn't play well, they think, oh, you think they sucked? They didn't suck. They held them to 14. No, I'm not saying they sucked today. They didn't play well. And I'm not surprised, to be honest with you. And here's what I'm saying, right? So Al Golden, talk about what he knows. First of all, let's talk about what they chose to do defensively. They made 2 changes to their starting lineup. Number one, I don't know that we saw Jordan Clark until the second half, which is saying a lot because that kid's been really good for them this year. So what they did was they went with basically 4-3 personnel, but instead of having the big ends, R.J. Oben and Bryce Young, who didn't play a whole lot in this game, they went Junior Tuihalamaka on one side and Josh Burnham on the other, which I thought was really smart. Normal D tackles, you had your normal inside linebackers. Then you had Jaden Alsbrough basically, and Trev, we talked about that this could be an option for Notre Dame is to kind of play him as sort of like the rover in this game, and that's exactly what they did. So when they were in their tight looks, he was a linebacker. When they would then spread out, he would then go cover the slot, and he did a really good job with that. And then they had their normal safeties and their normal corners. So I thought that adjustment allowed you to get – you had some strength on the field, but you had more – you still had guys that could run. I mean, RJ opened to Junior Tuihalamaka, that you're putting a more athletic player on the field, and you're not sacrificing a bunch of size there, right, at that big end position. You put Jaden Osborne on the field instead of Jordan Clark. Yeah, you're losing a little something from a coverage standpoint, but he can handle himself there. You know what I mean? And so he did. And so I thought that was step number one, which I thought was effective. But the fact that Notre Dame didn't have create a lot of negative, they turned the ball over 5 times. And my wife got super annoyed, actually 6 times, but 5 on offense. My wife got super annoyed because Greg McElroy kept talking about how they're not forcing these. She's like, is Notre Dame not doing anything to she got really annoyed by it. But in reality, I think 4 of those turnovers on offense were not forced by the Notre Dame players directly, meaning they weren't tipped balls like Burnham had against Stanford. They were, it wasn't until the Moore interception that they were directly forced. But I think, Sean, you hit on the nail on the head is the speed with which they played in this game, which was you have your assignment, and you could see that they had, this is your job. I mean, how many times did you see Jalen Sneed point to a guy? It's almost like they were playing pickup basketball. I got 7. No, I got 5. I got that guy. I got the guy in the yellow shirt. You know what I mean? That I thought was smart too. So they weren't aggressive in from a run stunt standpoint. They were aggressive in that once the ball was snapped, they were flying to the football. And that sped. Trevor, you and I talked about this in the Keys game. The key to beating the triple option is to speed it up, right? And they sped it up. And why is a guy that's never put the ball on the ground twice missing on pitches or another guy dropping a pitch? Because you could see it. He was getting his eyes up to see where the defense was.
Yep, he didn't want to get.
And so, yes, smacked. They didn't directly force the fumble, but they forced the fumble. You get what I'm saying? Yep. It's like people, in basketball, I'm getting ready to play a great defender, and it's like I'm already shook before the game even starts, right? I'm already out of my element before the game even starts. So I was getting out of my game plan because I know I'm playing this great defender.
Well, so if you think about it, Brian, there was a lot of pressure on Navy in this game because they were undefeated.
Oh, sure.
People were picking them to win. You know what I mean? That's
100%, Vince.
And
this is a big moment for them where Notre Dame's kind of like, this is just kind of what we do every week, right?
I think they were playing
games with a lot on the line.
They were playing a little bit tighter, and the speed of Notre Dame's defense was there.
That's what I mean? I think that's the bigger part of it, Vince. I do. Now, here's why I don't think they played great. I actually do think they had a lot of missed tackles at the point of attack. I think of one that Riley Mills had, and he was pissed at himself. You could see it too. He pounds his hand on the ground, because he knew he had a chance for a tackle for loss. I had if I'm looking at my notes here, first drive, I'm like, Drake had a missed tackle on an inside run to the fullback where he has a chance to blow the guy up behind the line. Adon Schuler missed a tackle. I'm looking at it. But the thing was, when they would make a guy miss, a guy would cut inside of someone, and as soon as he would get a yard, he's getting drilled by somebody else. That was the thing that I liked today. So yeah, they didn't play great football. They didn't. They had some mistakes. They caught some breaks. I mean, not just Navy putting the ball on the ground, but Blake Forvath, missing an open receiver down the field. Well, why did he miss an open receiver? Because Howard Cross was screaming right at him, and the kid threw off his back foot. Trevor, what did we talk about? Get this kid throwing off his back foot because he'll miss. And he had throws he missed in this game that he didn't miss against anybody else because nobody else could get pressure on him. The way that Notre Dame got pressure on him today. Here was the big concern for me, and it was a negative and a positive. You gave up too many big plays because of mistakes. Not so much great scheme, but mistakes. You had a Don Schuler turning a wheel route loose, right, on the flea flicker. The jet sweep flea flicker reverse. You know what I mean? Which, again, Navy does that. You know that. And Adon turns that guy loose for the big play. It was either Adon or Jack Kaiser. They were both trailing. I think it was Adon. It could have been Jack because Adon might have had, quarterback scramble responsibility. It was one of those two guys I thought it was Adon. They turn it loose. You had the play where Jalen Sneed, the guy muffs it, and Jalen comes up. Inexcusable. You got to make that play. You had the long run by Blake Horvath for the touchdown where I thought John, that was the one where I think you said Josh Burnham maybe could have played the edge a little bit more aggressively. But you can see on that play, Kingston or no, that was actually the first miss, but the second miss, Jalen Sneed and Jack Kaiser both took horrible angles to the quarterback. Jack went under the blocker, ran right into blocker. Jalen took a horrible angle, and he gets downfield for a big play. So it wasn't like, oh, what a great design. It was actually a play that shouldn't have gone for a big play. You executed poorly. And then the second big run that he had, because he had 4 big plays in the game, Kingston sees look action away, and he goes flying across the field, and they cut back behind it. Trevor, that's exactly what we talked about this week. That was my fear. When you have this many young players, they're gonna make mistakes against this offense. It's just gonna happen. It just is. You can't have 2 true sophomores in the secondary. And I mean, think about it. Christian Gray is the second most experienced defensive back playing on the field today, by far. You've got another true freshman on top of that. You've got 2 true sophomores starting at linebacker, another true freshman playing a bunch of linebacker. And your 2 starting defensive ends are redshirt sophomores. You had a lot of youth on the field today. You're going to make mistakes, and they did make mistakes. They made a lot of mistakes today. But Trevor, remember yesterday when we talked about this? We was talking about Thursday, and keys of the game. Look, they're going to make big plays. I said that when you have this many young guys, are going to make big plays. I said it. They're going to make big plays. You got to tackle them. But here's the thing. Look at those big plays we talked about, guys. So first drive, they didn't get any big plays. Second drive, they get the big long run, right? But they tackle them after 32 yards. It doesn't go for 6. What happens 3 plays later? Fumble, right? The next time they had a big play. Let's go down here to drive 4. They give up that's that one. Drive 5 by the defense. First play, 59-yard run. It's 21-7, I believe, at that time. It's still a ball game if they score. 57-yard run. Leonard Moore does a phenomenal job chasing the guy from behind because he's really fast. And so what happens? How many points did Navy get on that drive, fellas? 0. Because here's the thing, and this is what I said, Trevor. The reason you have to limit our key to victory was not don't allow big plays. It was limit the big plays. And when you do give them up, they can't be scores. They had 4 big plays in this game. Only one of them resulted in a touchdown. And on the other big plays, I'm gonna tell it to you again. Okay, so they had a long play, fumble. That's how the drive ended. Next drive, they had a long play, and they gave up a, let's see here, that's 59-yard gain, missed field goal. Right, and I'm trying to remember what the other one was. I'm trying to find that play where Jalen Sneed gave it up because they didn't score on that drive. I'm just trying to remember which drive it was where they had that busted play. Do you guys remember which play that was? Where they had the muff on that play? I can't find it in my notes. But the point is, they didn't score on that drive. I don't believe, or was that the first drive of the second half? Was that on that first drive of the second half?
And Mike, was that on the touchdown drive? Yeah.
It was in the third quarter touchdown drive. She gave up 4 big plays, but on 2 of those big plays, they got 0 points out of that drive. And the 4th one where they got points out of it, it was 31-7 when they got those points. You get what I'm saying? So in a lot of ways, yeah, you have stuff that the next time you play Navy or Army, you are gonna have to correct some of those things. You can't take those bad angles of the football. You can't over pursue from the backside. You got to run fit that sucker on the backside. But at the same time, they also made Navy run a lot more plays than they like to. And when you run this offense, the more plays you run, and we talked about this on Thursday, Trevor, the more plays you run as an option offense, the more opportunities there is for you to put the ball on the ground. And that's exactly what happened today. Yes, they gave up too many 6-yard gains and 7-yard gains, but that's really what it was. But you kept making them run play. Drake Bowen and Kingston and Jaden Oz, there's going to be a lot of critiques of their execution on in the film room tomorrow. But at the end of the day, they still got to the ball. They still brought guys down. And that's the thing I liked about the defenses. And the young guys that were making the mistakes, they didn't get shook. They came right back and made plays. They came right back, lined up, and did their jobs. And that's the thing I love about this group of young players is they just don't get shook when they make mistakes. They don't. They're just like, all right, that's my bad. And then they go make a play the next play. And so they didn't play great. I wouldn't say they played all that well, but they buckled down. They were great in the red zone. And they force Navy to go on drives. And again, the more you do that, the more they're going to make mistakes. So at the end of the day, they got the job done. And it wasn't always the prettiest, but they got the job done. But I expected it to be like this, guys. I predicted Navy to score 16 points. I expected Navy to get 4 scoring drives. I thought they'd sell in the red zone and hold them to field goals. Navy scored 14 points and missed a field goal. So, I mean, it was pretty much defensively, they did exactly what I thought was going to happen. And did what a great defense is supposed to do with a lot of young guys against an offense that most of these kids have never seen before. And so overall, that's why I was happy with the defensive performance, even though I don't think they necessarily played well, because they did what they needed to do. And like Trevor, I think you said it. It's not like they're going to have to play this a whole bunch more. It's a unique situation that it can be especially problematic for young players in a way that other systems don't necessarily put you in the kind of bind that young players are in. That's my takeaway on it.
And I'm sorry, Vince, just to add on real quick, nothing's changed, right? They came to this game playing what? Teska ran, I think he averaged 2.8 yards a day. That's the guy you want to stop. That fullback, this is the same thing. The fullback dive, just stop that. And then we'll let our athleticism and our assignments stop Horvath and the perimeter run game, and it will play our guys back to stop the big plays in the passing game. They were not about to get gashed on the inside, right? We've seen Navy gash Notre Dame on the inside when they beat them a few years back. And then when they had to come back, it was Teska. When they had to come back a couple years ago, it was him making big runs.
And Stefano.
Stefano. Yeah. So they made a concerted effort to shut down the interior run for Navy, and everything had to be outside, which led to those pitches, and turnovers and other things. So that's just, Sean, once again, big picture of what they wanted to do. I don't think they wanted to give up the big plays, but
no. But if you give them up, tackle them. Don't let them turn into touchdowns. Yeah. Sean, to your point, the fullbacks today rushed for the 2 fullbacks combined for 37 rushing yards on 14 carries, which is 2.6 yards per carry. Coming into this game, Teska was averaging 6.2 yards per carry, and Fafano was averaging 5.1 yards per carry. Also, Eli, the Heidenreich kid, was averaging 8.1 yards per carry. They gave up a little bit more on the Jets on a couple of those than I would have liked, but he averaged 4.6 yards per carry. Right. And Horvath had the 2 long runs, which padded his stats. He had a 57-yard run or 60-yard run and a 40. What was the touchdown run? He had a 47-yard. He had 107 yards on 2 carries.
Yep.
So on his other 12 carries, he had about 20-some yards.
Stole my stat.
That's it. My bad, homie. Great minds think alike. That's how we work.
You're not wrong.
That's how we do it here.
That was going to be, I was just going to briefly bring up, as we're talking about the defense as a whole, they big played Notre Dame at times, obviously. And to your point, 2 of those were those 2 big runs by the quarterback where he had 107 yards on 2 carries. 107 yards on 2 carries, man. Like, that's massive.
For a team that finished with 310 yards of offense.
Right. 2 plays.
Which means they were barely 203 yards on 55 other plays.
Right. Exactly. So were there mistakes? Yes. You can't give up those big plays. You can't. Yeah. You can't give up those big plays. And, I'm not saying that those plays were obviously the difference in the game or anything like that, but they were the difference in those drives, right? You can't give up those plays.
Tackling them and not letting them end up in touchdowns was the difference in the game.
Well, fair enough. Yeah, absolutely. So that's my biggest issue. And this Notre Dame team defensively was in position to make a lot of plays, and they missed some tackles. Right. And that's going to happen. I get it.
But they don't recover fumbles that get muffed if you're not close to the ball.
They're all over the ball because they're
right. It's not like the guy muffs the ball and then he fumbles it 3 more times before the defense finally shows up. Right. Like the one where he threw it and missed. I mean, he can't recover his own fumble because Junior Jalamaka hit him as soon as he did that. And then Jalen was right there to fall on it. Right. Exactly. Same with the pitch. Like, he's fumbling the ball, but the Notre Dame defense was right there.
Right on top. Those guys didn't have a chance of recovering those muffs.
Right.
And honestly, the same thing goes with, the muff punt and things like, because those guys were all right there to swarm when that ball hit the turf.
Yeah.
Right. And so, overall,
those returners were having a tough time with that wind.
Yeah, they were.
Like when a kick returner lets the ball hit him right in the face and go out of bounds, you're like, that kid's having a tough day with that wind. He's having a tough
day. Peter, baby. Just like get away. Just get away. Because
it was a kick return. The one I'm talking about, the kick return where he's just like, it just hits him right in the face.
Yeah, fair.
So
those punt returns were tough. Like, the struggle bus was real on that one. So let's talk about the defense individually. I'll let you guys kind of drive the bus how you want to go here with how you want to talk about the defense individually, whichever direction you guys want to go. Brian, I will let you lead this one off. Individual, like if you want to talk defensive line, if you want to talk second, however you want, because this is a weird game as far as like for the defense, you know what I mean? As far as like breaking it down by like position group, just you know what I'm saying?
I thought the way Al Golden put his defense today, I actually think it's a little easier than it normally is because they just ran a 4-3 defense.
True,
and that's basically what they did, right? Is they ran a 4-3 defense with an athletic Sam linebacker.
And there weren't a lot of like calls. It was just playing.
Yeah, they treated Jaden Osbury as more of a Sam linebacker today than a rover per se.
Sure.
But it really starts up front because I'm very curious to see if the All-22 tells me the same story that I thought watching it live, which is I thought the defensive line played their freaking butts off. I thought Junior had a heck of a game. I thought Junior Tumaca played like a man possessed today. I mean, I always laugh, you play like his hair on fire. That phrase always makes me laugh whenever I think about using it for Junior because he's got so much hair. Like he's really going to play like his hair on fire, But he just played so dang hard, and he was being thrust into a role that he hasn't played. He's a Viper. They're having to put his hand on the ground at times, and Josh Burnham was putting his hand on the ground. I mean, Josh Burnham's never. Until this season, has never put his hand on the ground until this season. He'd been a Mike linebacker and a quarterback in high school, and he was a Viper last year, so he wasn't putting his hand on the ground. And this year he's finally doing it. And then they moved him to Viper, and he's not putting his hand on the ground. Now he's got to put his hand on the ground again. I thought Josh had a really good day today. Had a great job breaking up that slip screen that they tried to run behind him. I thought Howard and Riley did their jobs and really ate up space. Like you, Sean, you're talking about Teska. There was nowhere for him to go. It's like he would get past the line and get tackled, and you're thinking that's probably about a 5-yard gain, and they're like +2 because there was such a push up the middle, and Navy just couldn't get down the field. Trev, you and I talked about the need to keep those linemen off the linebackers. I thought that for the most part they did a pretty good job. The linebackers were running free today. They took some bad angles and stuff, but they were running free today. Well, I thought the D-line and like even the one play where Christian Gray gets beat on a go route, and a good ball, he hits that ball. The reason he couldn't hit it is because Howard Cross whooped the guard and was right in the kid's face and forced him to throw off his back foot.
Yeah, and that was a prayer.
Yeah.
It just went straight up in the air. Almost a great completion, but
almost
he had to put that up.
But that's Howard Cross doing his job and making a disruptive play. So the numbers don't look sexy for the D line. As a defense, they had two negatives in the game. That's it. Two tackles for loss for a grand total of -2 yards, but they were far more disruptive than that, in my opinion. And that's why a lot of those plays were, +2, +1, +3. They were not letting, some of the 4-yard runs, you're like, you're giving up a little bit more than 4, but I'm like, I've watched this team play. When they run that play against other teams, that sucker goes for 15. They really did a great job of shutting it down. And outside of the 2 quarterback runs, which I think both happened on stretch type of plays, where it wasn't like right up the middle. I thought the defensive line played outstanding football today. I really did. And one of the keys we had to victory was you got to dominate the line as a whole, but especially up the middle. And I thought they did that. And the one touchdown drive they had in the first half, I believe the backup defensive line was on the field on that drive.
There you go. Sean, thoughts?
I'm just going to add, because I'm sure all of us are going to bring up something. I think we talked about this a little bit, the communication we saw. And I think we saw remnants of it against Georgia Tech. These were 2 different teams with similar traits that force you to pay attention and play assignment football and have great eye discipline. And they did a great job of that 2 consecutive weeks. Bad angles, mistakes, things of that nature. You don't like seeing it, but like these offenses, they force you to be out of position or take a wrong angle, and then they can pop one. And then it's just up to you getting them on the ground and going to the next play. To give up 14 points once again to hold Teska, who, he pretty much, if he goes, everybody else feeds off of that. And they shut him down. They shut the fullback an interior run game down. And then that funnel, Al Golden, once again, is funneling that offense into the strength of their defense, which is speed. Oh, you want to go to the perimeter? We can run for days with you,
right.
And if we take the right angles, we're gonna shut you down. If we don't take the right angles, you might be able to pop one. I think they did a great job. I want to just point out the communication because, like Brian said, look, you saw every play. Drake was tapping the tackles, letting them know when to move, hollering out signals. The other linebackers were communicating. Defensive backs, they didn't really have to communicate as much. It was one play in the second half where I don't think Horvath, if he had just simply snapped the ball and just thrown it to the outside, they had a wide open receiver standing with no one covering him for about 10 to 15 seconds. And finally, Christian Gray figured, oh, let me go over here and cover this guy. But other than that, the communication by the defense today was absolutely fantastic. And that's paramount when you're facing a team like this. Pre-snap, being able to communicate, get lined up, and then go ahead and play with speed and physicality. They did that. So I'll just point that out because I'm sure Trevor's going to point out some of the other nuances of the defense today.
Can I say something real quick that I forgot to add during the opening? Did you guys notice how Notre Dame was doing that line shift today? Do you guys know why they're doing that? So, Vince, you know this. You grew up running the option. You have a count, and the count base is based on where you're lined up. You have a count 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's how you're reading dive, keep, pitch. You're reading on certain plays. You're reading for the dive or the veer off of 1. You're reading off of keep, pitch off 2, or whatever the case may be. And so when you make that late shift after Navy has already communicated, you have now messed up their count. And I think that was something that I thought was kind of interesting that we haven't really seen Notre Dame that I remember doing that before. Sean, I don't know if you remember seeing them do that before, but they would line up and they would just shift the defensive line as, like Georgia does that all the time. And that really can screw up an option offense when you're trying to get your count down. You know what I mean? Because it's like, okay, he was 1, but now he's not 1. And so I think that's partly why you saw them, maybe the offensive line maybe have some issues on top of how well the D-line played, getting up to that second level, and why there were some miscues and mistakes. But then because I think that was, I think, getting in their head a little bit, that shift that the Notre Dame defense was doing because of it doesn't hurt all teams, but against an option team where you've got to know 1, 2, 3, 4 based off how they line up, and all of a sudden they change that shift. That completely changes your count.
Yeah.
1 is now 3 or whatever. You know what I mean? It can change.
Right. No, you're 100% right. And when we ran the option and when I was in high school, the line had calls and it was part of the cadence, and the center guard would make a call within the cadence. And if teams would move after those calls were made, it screwed everything up. And now in high school, it's a lot harder for teams to do and things like that. So we never really ran into that problem, but college is a different animal, right? And those calls are telling the tackles and the guards and the center what to do, and if it's going to be a pin and pull, or if it's going to be this, or if it's going to be that, all of those different things. And so when you're moving that late in the cadence, it makes things very, very difficult for the offense, because what normally is a very well-oiled machine offensively, because they want the defense to react to what you're doing offensively. Notre Dame was forcing Navy to react to what they were doing defensively. And that's where things turned, right? And that's where the speed of Notre Dame was a detriment to Navy, and that is where scheme was a detriment to Navy as well, with the movement of the defensive line. And I want to add a piece of this as well, and this will be my part of it, I guess. But, there was a play where I believe it was KVA, and he was they said he was blitzing. And, he made a play or whatever the case may. Dude, that was not a blitz. That was him seeing the play and being shot out of a freaking cannon coming downhill. I was like, that is not a blitz in any way, shape, or form. That is just how fast he is at recognizing what he sees and making a play on it. And I was like, Notre Dame's not blitzing in this game, man. They're just reading and reacting to what they're seeing. And I just think it was too much for Navy to handle, to be honest with you. They hadn't seen anything like this all season, with all the success that they've had,
nor will
everything they've done
forward.
Exactly. And so they're still going to beat up on other teams. This is not a bad Navy football team. This is a good Navy football team, but they're never going to see this kind of defense again. And they hadn't up to this point, and they got shell shocked. They got shell shocked.
Vince, if every team on their schedule the rest of the way tries to replicate the same exact game plan that Notre Dame did, they're going to get destroyed.
Yeah, they can't do it.
That doesn't mean that the game plan was great, but you can't do some of the things that Al like Sean, you made the point. It's just let them fly to the ball. You can't do that if you don't have
those dudes. Yeah.
Right? Drake Bowen, Jaden Alsberg, Kingston, Jalen Sneed, and guys like that. So yeah, you're correct.
100%. Trevor, got anything to add on the defense, sir?
Nothing too much. You guys covered all the bases, and like I said, for me, from a defensive standpoint, I look at this, and if you look at just this game specifically, improvements need to be made against the triple option offense. But again, like you see that one more time this year, and that's it. You see it against Army, and that's it. The one thing that I will say with this game specifically, none of the young guys were a liability today. There was no one person on that defense where you look at and it's like, yeah, they just attacked that guy all day.
Yeah.
And I think when you have that many players that haven't really seen the triple option that much, I think that's a win. I mean, I won't hamp too much on the speed because it's evident. In years past, when Navy would get big plays like that, those go for touchdowns. They just would. And this year,
59-yard touchdown run would have been about an 80-yard touchdown run.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Blake Horvath can run.
Run. Yeah, 100%. And then you just see Leonard Moore coming out of nowhere into frame, and it's like
Tyler Shuck was watching the game. He started getting flashbacks. He started getting oh God, what happened?
I mean, it's just
the rest of the game. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And this team can run, man. But my only other takeaway that's significant, and this goes for because you go back and look, Leonard Moore has never really seen the triple option. I don't know how much Christian Gray played against Navy last year. Drake Bowen, Jaden Osbury, Kingston. I don't know. I mean, when he started playing more in the second half, I don't know how much of the triple option Jordan Clark has seen. Yeah, he's been in college a lot, but I don't know if he's played against that many triple option offenses when he was with Arizona State. Don Schuler, this is his first game getting meaningful minutes against a triple option. And I can go back and look at the team as a whole on defense and say, Navy wasn't able to lock in on one guy and say, hey, like we are going after him today. So improvements need to be made for when they do play Army. But one thing that I do feel good about is like there's not like one guy that's like, I don't know if he should really be seeing much time against Army because he didn't do that great today. So, I mean, typically in the Army or in the triple option games, you see guys come away and, have those insane tackle games. And Jack Kaiser and Jalen Sneed combined for like 18 tackles today. So, there's improvements to be made, for when they do play Army. But it makes me feel good that improvements need to be made, and you held a team to 14 points. So overall,
really good team, a really good offense.
Yeah, absolutely. An offense that is more, I guess you could say, schematically dense than what Army runs, because Army is more of the traditional triple option. Navy does pose a passing threat, and Army doesn't really. So going to be interested to see how they play against Army. But again, I just feel bad for the rest of the offenses that this Notre Dame defense has to play, man. I mean, if we're leaving this game saying, yeah, they didn't really play that well, and they gave up 14 points in 60 minutes, that's just, hate to be Florida State.
Oh, that's just a general principle week after week anyway.
Yeah, that's a general statement. That's not just in pertains to
right. It's a whole.
Yeah, that was just
even when they're good. I'm kind of like hate to be Florida State.
So fellas, let's go around the horn, give our game balls. Brian, I'll let you go first.
I do want to talk about the play of the linebackers real quick, Vince.
Okay, go ahead.
I do want to say this. I was ready to, and you guys know this, I was ready to say, take freaking Jalen Sneed off the field, please. He had 2 or 3 plays earlier. I was like, this kid is just terrible. Just out of position, the bad pursuit on that play. But I'll say this, that kid settled, take the touchdown away. He fell on a ball that, after the rough start, I thought he actually made a lot of really good plays in this game. He settled in. And they used the speed, and they just said, hey, here's your job. You fly to this and you take that. And I thought after a pretty rough start, I thought Jalen did a pretty good job of settling in this game. I thought Drake had a couple really bad fits early or in a couple mistakes. I thought he settled in. So to your point, Trevor, not only were none of them individual liabilities for an extended period of time, I thought they all settled in, and that's why Navy had a tougher time. And the only really big play they got going in the second half was a play where they muffed a ball. And, that can be that weird thing where the muff a ball, you kind of freeze like, okay, do I got to run to the ball type of situation. But Kingston had that big mistake early that resulted in Kingston was the guy that I thought made the initial mistake on the 59-yard run, where he over pursued from the backside. But after that, it's kind of like he got pissed off and started punishing him. And I just need to say this: if you can't hit the quarterback like Kingston did, then why are we playing tackle football anymore?
Yeah, don't.
Why are we playing tackle football anymore?
Like, what are we doing?
What are you supposed to do? I mean, he didn't drive him into the ground. He jumps up to try to. It just
he still had the ball in his hands. He still had the ball in his hand. It wasn't like it was a late hit. And I don't okay, he fell on top of the quarterback. That's called gravity. Like there's literally nothing.
Drive the guy into the ground. Right. That was such a crap call. Freeman was rightfully pissed off on that play.
That was a bad call.
But I'll say this: I am very curious to see how these linebackers play against Army. Now that they've seen it 3 weeks later, 4 weeks later, how they play against Army.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm also interested to see if the scheme is any different from Al Golden against
It'll be
Army.
Different, but the principles will be the same.
Right.
The scheme will be different because Army lines up in different personnel groupings. They line up in different formations. They do a lot more. I mean, their entire offense is built around the quarterback running the football. So it's going to be different, but the principles are the same for the linebackers. Know your role, do your job. Don't get caught. You got to fly to the ball, but you can't get caught on the ball that you then make some of the mistakes that they made.
Yeah.
And I think it also is going to help them bounce back quicker for USC now that they've seen it twice.
Fair
as well. So that was my takeaway. And then I thought Xavier Watts was excellent in this game. I do think Christian was a little bit out of his element, gave up a couple balls, but some of the catches he was giving up, it was clearly they were going to give that up. Because you could see on the slant route, Deshaun, you were talking about, Christian, he hit that slant and Christian freezed because he was like, is a slant and go coming? Like I'll give up a 7-yard slant. That's fine. Tackle him, move on the next play. What we're not going to do is get beat on the sluggo for a 60-yard touchdown.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And that was that's good. That's what we talked about. So, I thought the pass interference is a teaching experience. Hey, man, you didn't chug on the guy, but there's no reason for you to have your hand on him like that. I thought it was a ticky-tack foul. I don't think they necessarily should have called it. I didn't think he impeded the guy. Like at no point in time did the guy look like he was running slower because of it. But when you get your hand on a guy like that, they're going to call it. They're just going to call it, even if it's it's uncatchable. But they're going to view it as it was uncatchable because you held them. That's how they're going to view it. But outside of that, I thought the secondary played well. Adon had I think a blown assignment early, but then he settled in and played well, recovered the fumble. So just overall, I wanted to say that I thought that I think Trevor, you said it. The young players made a lot of mistakes today. They did. But none of them allowed it to snowball. Even Jalen Sneed, he made a lot of early mistakes today. Didn't allow it to snowball. And he's making, I think it was what do you have, 9 tackles? Yeah, 9 tackles today. 0 solos, 9 assisted. That means he was around the ball all game long. And even one of his missed tackles that he had, you'd like to see him make the play, but because the guy had to kind of do so much to get around him, then boom, right there, the next guy's there for a stop. So, overall, I thought you saw those guys really, really settle in. And as the game went on, they did some really good things.
Hey, keep the train moving. Give out your game ball, Brian, for the defense. Let's go.
Can I give it to Al Golden? No, I'm going to give it to Jack Kaiser. I thought Jack did a really nice job today.
Really good.
Flying all around the field, 9 tackles, had a tackle for loss, was real physical at the point of attack. Good pursuit, and I just love seeing the veteran kid go out there and play. I mean, there's several guys you could give it to: Junior Chilamaka, Josh Burnham, Adon Schuler with the big fumble recovery. Leonard Moore had a pretty darn good game today. Howard Cross, I thought, played really well today. Xavier Watts played like an All-American today. There's a lot of guys that played really good football today, but I just thought Jack was really a huge factor in just on just be. I mean, Alec Teska is going to have Jack Kaiser nightmares. I mean, I think Jack Kaiser had 9 tackles. I think probably 7 of them were just drilling Alec Teska, as soon as he was getting the ball. So I'm going Jack Kaiser. I thought his veteran presence today was very important. But I was back and forth. I thought Junior at one point in time, Xavier, Drake, Cross. I mean, you could point to Josh Burnham. There's a lot of guys that could make. Jaden Osbury was flying all over the field. He didn't make a lot of plays like tackles, but Leonard. There's a lot of guys that had a chance to be named that, but I just really felt like Jack was the guy that I'm giving my game ball to.
All right, before I throw it to Sean, mine was going to be Jack Kaiser as well, and I don't want to pick anybody else. Like I thought Jack Kaiser, he is going, just like JD Bertrand was missed, like when he moved on because of what he was able to do against triple option team. Jack Kaiser kind of filled that role, and that veteran presence, like you said. I mean, it just looked like 24 was around the football all day long. I mean, all day long. So
Vince, there's a couple times I actually thought it was Drake. I was like, "Ooh, look at that fast fill by Drake!" And I was like,
it was 24.
No, that was Jack.
24, not 34. Yeah,
because he was 100%. Crashing downhill like we normally see Drake
yes.
crash downhill. Yeah,
100%. Yes, completely agree with you. Completely agree. So, Sean, game ball for the defense.
I'm going to go with the D tackles.
Nice.
I'm going to go with Cross, Mills, Rubio. 10 tackles amongst those guys. I was shocked to look at the stats and see that Gabriel Rubio had 4. Right, so he played really well. I think they did a great job of helping or being the front line of shutting down that interior run game, allowing the linebackers to flow, play their game, use their speed, and be aggressive. So I'm going to go ahead and just say they set the tone. And against option teams, is all about that triangle, right? That middle linebacker, defensive tackles. If they shut down the run game, then everything else usually goes well for your defense. So I'll go with the D tackles in the way they performed today.
All right, Trevor, you're up.
I'm going to go Leonard Moore. I think that his tackle on that long run by Blake Horvath, that could have been a momentum swing for Navy. And I think Leonard Moore prevented that. And I mean, just on top of it, anytime that he makes a play on the ball, he just showcases how freak of an athlete he is. I think the thing that's crazy about Leonard Moore right now is he's still not a refined football player. The same way that we were talking earlier about Jeremiah Love is like, he has all the physical tools. And he is going to be a menace once he learns and starts to craft and become more of a football player. When that happens for Leonard Moore, man, I mean, he is kind of now that he is now one of the flagships in the Marcus Freeman recruiting trail of like, look at the kind of talent that we're bringing in here. His range is crazy. That interception was nuts. And I think he made a touchdown saving tackle that could have potentially swung the momentum of the game, potentially. Yeah. So,
and they got 0 points out of that drive. I want to say it again. They got 0 points out of that drive, Trevor.
Yep, absolutely. That's why effort matters, man. Not giving up on the play. It was great. And out of the young guys who were seeing the triple option for the first time, until I go back and look at the all-22 from just the initial eye test of watching the game, he's the one kid that I thought it was his first time seeing the triple option, and I don't even remember him kind of having to overcome a mistake early. He was solid the whole game. So mine's going to Leonard Moore.
Like it.
Who did he have to replace? Who did he have to step in and replace?
I mean, he was a pretty decent.
An All-American cornerback.
No,
I mean,
right.
let's not discount the pressure that's on a kid when you're stepping in to fill the shoes of Benjamin Morrison either.
Sure. Yeah. Good call.
Like he's acting like he replaced some senior who stinks, and they were just waiting until he was ready to take over. Like that's the kind of mindset that kid has. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like he's an impressive young man.
Yeah,
impressive young man.
Yeah.
Before we jump over to the super chats, I want to talk special teams, gentlemen, and I'm particularly hard on special teams play, and so I'm going to refrain from giving my opinion just yet. And so I'm gonna throw it to you guys first and see if you guys are on the same page as I am with the special teams for Notre Dame today. And we're talking the kicking game, talking coverage, all of that stuff. So it's all fair game when we're talking special teams. But Brian, I'm gonna throw it to you first. Thoughts on Notre Dame's special teams today in a game where special teams should not have mattered as much as I feel like it did. Go ahead.
Look, I got nothing but love for Zach Yoakum. I mean, that kid is stepping in for a starting kicker. He's a walk-on. I thought he hit the one he missed good. I think the wind pushed a little bit left, and he's trying. He's trying, and he was pissed at himself. And you know what? He got another shot to come back and kick a field goal from a similar distance, and he drilled it right down the middle late in the first half. And you know what? So shout out to him. He's your backup kicker. I got nothing but love for it. I watched this special teams, and I'm like, man, these coverage units are so good because they're so athletic.
Correct.
And they just fly down and I looked over to Angela. I was like, why does this kid keep trying to run the ball out? Like, when are you going to learn not to run the ball out? Like,
because
what are
he's
you
used
doing?
to playing the American. That's why he's just running the ball
this is
out.
not the AAC, cuz you gotta fair catch that sucker, man.
You're right.
And then to watch the one dude twice, the first guy down there was a freaking defensive end.
Yes.
In Logan Thomas.
Multiple times, by the way.
Like,
I guess one time he was offside,
so
but whatever.
But honestly, a lot of the success, in my opinion, comes from the fact that they're really athletic. They still are really an unsound special teams, in my opinion. It's like make too many just silly mistakes, just like, what are we doing here? You know what I mean? Just like returners not lined up properly and the ball's going over their head and offsides penalties and just overall, it was a solid special teams performance. There's nothing great, nothing. The coverage was good because they're so athletic. It's just kind of okay. I mean, it's hard for me to really evaluate it too much because of how windy it was and the fact that your starting field goal kicker didn't participate. And I thought Eric Goyens did a nice job of getting the ball where it's supposed to get to, and then hitting that one right off the guy's face mask. I mean, it was really pinned perfectly, I thought, by Goyens. I mean, honestly, when Mitch Jeter gets back, at least for the first couple games, I'd let Goyens keep kicking off.
Oh, I would too. He's doing exactly what he's supposed to do.
PATs and field goals, exactly.
Because they're not asking him to put it in the back of the end zone. That's not what they're asking him to do, because he's shown that he can do that. They're asking.
But why would you, when your coverage unit is this freaking fast?
That's what I'm saying.
They caught a ball, Vince, at the -2, and he got tackled at the 11. And you look at that kid, he was like, "Where the heck did that come from?"
Yes,
like he's
100%.
like, "I got something. I got this." No, I don't.
Right.
It just happened like that. It went from clear screen at the 5 to like 6 dudes being on him at the 11. And you're like, God, Lord. You know what I mean?
Right.
And the Navy kids are like, I can't catch this guy. I can't catch this guy. It was so bad. But it's just that's athleticism and speed and talent, not so much. Like I get annoyed by some of the sloppiness. You know what I mean? Like, when was the last time you were at a game and you saw 2 offsides penalties on kickoffs? One from each team, but hey, I'll say this. It could have been worse. You could have been the special teams coordinator for Navy because that might have been one of the worst special teams performances. You fumbled you had 2 punts you fumbled. You missed a field goal. You had a ball hit off a kid's face and go out of bounds at the 4.
And that is not Navy,
not
though.
Our day.
That's so not Navy. Like that's
it's the wind. You can see the wind. It's East Rutherford, New Jersey, man. We've been watching Giants games our whole life. That is not a place that you want to be kicking and catching and stuff like that. But again, it's also the moment, Vince. The moment is there. It was that way for the Notre Dame guys too. And like their punter just like booming the ball like too far, like out kick, not only out kicking the coverage, but like
kicked it out of the back of the end zone.
There was one punt that landed 2 yards. To your point, he hit one punt that literally landed 2 yards from the back line.
Yes.
Like, you weren't even close.
No,
that,
not
man.
even
It
close.
was a rough day for this. And they had the offsides penalty on the kickoff. But they did have the one, like for Notre Dame, that frustrated me is like they re-kick the one, and then they get a delay game penalty, and then you have a bad kick and a bad coverage, and he gets all the way out to the 35. It's like that's not how it should have gone. You know what I mean? It's like, come on, guys. What are we doing here?
Agreed. Trevor, what do you think about special teams, brother?
Yeah, I'm kind of with Brian. The kicking was frustrating when you just kind of look at it face value, like the place kicking. But I mean, you don't have the guy kicking that was meant to that you brought in to be your place kicker this year. So, from an execution standpoint, like it's frustrating. I don't like seeing missed field goals. Like I definitely come from the mindset of like when it's something that's not like a 50+ yarder for a college kid, it's like that is your one job is to make field goals, regardless of if you're a walk-on or if you're a scholarship guy or if you're a transfer like that is your sole job on that play. But again, at the end of the day, like it had no inflection on the game. And it was a backup walk-on. I can live with that. The thing that made me frustrated was there was one kickoff where it was a short kickoff, and whoever the guy was fielded it at the 10-yard line, and it was a fair catch. Like I don't understand. I don't understand the lack of aggression in the kick return game. You go and you bring in a guy like Jaden Harrison, who's an All-American returner. There's no emphasis on getting him the football, and you're calling fair catches on the 10-yard line. There wasn't a defender in view on the screen, and it's a fair catch call. Like it's stuff like that. Like, are you afraid that Navy's going to punch the ball out from your? I don't understand. The lack of aggressiveness in the return game does not mirror the aggressiveness in the kick coverage, which is just I don't get it. But outside of that, I mean, it was special teams. I think was fine. James Rendell had a decent day punting. His one short punt had an insane amount of hang time, which led to a muff. The kid just lost it, literally just in the sky. And he ended up reaching for the ball.
His first one flipped the field.
Yeah.
They were punting from deep in their own territory. Flipped the field. Yep. It was like 40-something yard punt, and it was high, so he got no return on it.
Yep. So punting today I thought was a lot better. I would like to see more aggressiveness in the return game.
I got something wrong. The play where they had the offsides and then the false start is the one where they fair caught it. Trevor, to your point. The one that went over Jordan Faison's head and then he fair caught it. That's what I meant by the one for Navy was Notre Dame went offside. Notre Dame had pinned him deep. Notre Dame was offsides. They had to re-kick it, and Navy got out to the 35. So I got those two things.
Gotcha.
Wrong.
Yeah. Sean, thoughts?
Man, they cover special teams perfectly. Just a little tidbit on that series where they talked about Notre Dame being offsides, Logan Thomas being offsides. Then they go back. I think Coach Newberry, you could tell he was upset because Navy was trying to decide right there. They had just scored. They were trying to decide whether or not they were going to go ahead and surprise onside because Notre Dame had not adjusted, even though they had been moved backwards. He was thinking about it, and that's how they ended up getting the delay of game right after that, which ticked him off even more. He's like, dude, like you could see he was talking to the special teams coach, like either do it or don't. Like, make a decision, do it. I told you. I'd be interested in his post-game comments because you could tell that they were thinking about it because at that point, they needed to get the ball back. They weren't going to do it defensively. I think they knew we're going to have to go ahead and get an extra possession here at some point. There's no better chance now because they're probably not expecting it even more after the penalty. Like, I said Logan Thomas. They were offsides. I'm sorry. They got backed up 5 yards. Notre Dame is probably like, oh, they're really not going to try it now, get moved back 5 yards. I probably would have tried it. I would have been even more emboldened to try it right then to get that extra possession. And then they get the delay of game, which was like really weird to get a delay of game after that penalty.
A delay of game on a kickoff.
On a kickoff is crazy. That is.
And I don't know that I've ever seen that. Honestly, I didn't even know that. I didn't know. Matter of fact, I didn't even know that was a thing.
Right.
Like,
one of the
I knew you can get delay if you keep you guys you take the ball and you throw the ball over there and you can get a delay because you're but I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah, one of the Navy gunners. One of the Navy gunners that was next to the kicker was standing there looking at him, just like going like this, because the play clock was winding down. The kicker was just kind of like standing and staring at the ball.
And the kicker's like talking to one side, he's talking to the other side, like because my son was watching because he focuses on kicking, and he's like, I think, is he a lefty? Is he a righty? Because he kept like repositioning where he was walking back, kick, and he kept
I think that's where Sean was coming from. Like
he was waiting for the signal. He was trying to see what they were going to do.
Right. Yeah, that's why I think Sean was saying like that was on the special teams coordinator, not necessarily the kicker, because he's waiting on the call.
Head coach went straight for the coordinator on the sideline. Yeah. He was not happy at all. Not happy at all. I'll keep my analysis pretty short and sweet. You can't miss a 36-yarder. I don't care who you are. If you call yourself a kicker, you can't miss a 36-yarder. I don't care if you're getting scholarship money or not, man. You can't miss a 36-yarder. And it wasn't even on the hash. It was in the middle of the field. Like, you got to hit that. You got to hit that. I think punting was better.
His next one, I thought that was good.
He did. No, and I give him full credit for that because they're
so mean to kickers, Vince.
I know. Well, I'm meaner to my own kid when he misses, so it's all good.
I know.
So, but I thought punting was better to your guys' point, and it could only get better from an overall standpoint. So he only had punted twice, and I thought the first one was a little short, but it was a muff and it got in the air, and hey, that's great. And the other one flipped the field, so he's 2 for 2 in my opinion. On
they let him
kicks.
kick it. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
On the one he flipped the field, they actually let him punt it.
Exactly.
Imagine that.
Shocker. He's actually good when you just let him kick the freaking ball.
Who knew?
Yeah, I know, right? Coverage is good.
We
have
said in
issue.
fall camp though. Sean and I said in fall camp, when that kid is allowed to kick it normal, that ball does funky stuff.
Sure.
And we said during fall camp, like, if they let him kick like
That's
that,
a weapon.
this isn't going to be the last time that you're going to see somebody That's why it gets pissed off about that. But like,
it's
today,
a weapon.
they let him do it.
Use it.
Combined with the wind, Yeah.
It's an absolute weapon. What I do not understand, to Trevor's point, and I just want to add on to it a little bit, is the lack of aggression when it comes to the return game, because they even the broadcasters said, well, this kicker doesn't really put it in the end zone. Like, you knew, if you watched any film, you know this kid's not putting it in the end zone. He's putting it on the 5 or the 10.
Mm-hmm.
Return it. Like, get some yards, return it. Like, it should never be a fair catch situation. It should always be, hey, we're returning this thing. We're going to get some yards. We're going to get good field position. I have a problem with that. That is a preparation thing. That is a game planning thing. And that is poorly executed, in my opinion, from a game plan standpoint. Like, that's not okay. People always say how special teams is it's a third of the game and all this stuff. Then make it that way. Use that to your advantage. And again, Notre Dame whooped them. Like, it was never close. Like, the field position game didn't end up, being a factor in this. I get it, but it might be. Like, if you see the way the teams are kicking off like this and you're not going to be aggressive, that bothers me. Like, you need to take advantage of this and use field. We've talked about field position in the punt game, right? Like, that hasn't bitten Notre Dame yet, but it could if they continue to do some of the things that they're doing. Same thing goes for the return game. Let your guys return. You got an All-American returning your kicks. Let him loose. Let him return some kicks, man. That was my biggest disappointment, I think, in this game, was the missed field goal and then the lack of aggression when it came to the return game. So those are my thoughts on special teams. So that's going to do it for defense and special teams. We're going to get to your super chats in a minute. But before we do, make sure you hit that like button, that subscribe button, that notification bell, share with your family and friends, and of course, jump on the boards.irishbreakdown.com for all of your breakdown and analysis needs. That is where you need to go. You will not regret it. It could be the best money spent. Best money you could spend. I'm just saying. And I don't even have a dog in the fight. So make sure you get on the boards.irishbreakdown.com. All right, fellas, let's finish this thing off with some super chats. And again, if you would like to get a question in or a comment or whatever, this is the time. Load us up with some super chats. We're going to go down the list. We're going to answer them. We're going to have some fun with it. And then we'll get on out of here. So let me turn it on here. Yep, we got a few super chats we'll get to here. Brian, why don't you go ahead and pull those up? I'll read them and we'll just kind of go from there.
Hey, Sean.
Joshua Williams, thanks so much for the super chat, man. Appreciate you very much. Great Irish win against Navy and ACC officials. Coach Marcus Freeman needs to take one for the team at his presser on the continued below average ACC officiating. Why are they constantly so bad? Any speculation?
Well, I just think they do a poor job of preparing. I mean, look, the ACC officials have sucked for a long time. I don't think they put nearly enough time into getting good crews and coaching good crews and making sure they're trained properly. I think that's a big part of it. And when you don't, I've heard the ACC pays far lower than the Big Ten and the SEC, which means if you're a good official, you're going to be like, hey, if I'm a good official, I'm going. Especially now, the
shortage,
going to the Big
is
Ten
a
or the
thing.
SEC, right? You got to fly to wherever you're going anyway. So I think that's a big factor there. I think there's a lot of different things. I would be more than willing to do a GoFundMe for Marcus Freeman and say, hey, coach, man, we got you. You say what you need to say. You know what I mean? I know some donors that need to step on. Like, hey, coach, man, you say what you need to say about the officiating, and we got that fine covered for you, bro.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? But it's a joke.
He can afford it.
I've said before, like, that's something that if I was the AD at Notre Dame, I'd say, hey, look, this needs to be discussed before we re-up with you guys the next time. You know what I mean? Like, you want us to stay with you. You got to do something about this because this is rinky dink. This is half butted. This is not taking seriously things that should be taken seriously because it matters because it impacts games. Poor officiating impacts winning and losing. Go ask Brent Pry. Go ask Justin Wilcox. I mean, it impacts games. It impacts outcomes. And, it just they suck. It's just really poorly officiated. Officiating in the ACC is just terrible. Just in general statements. Like, it's just generally statements. Just it's bad. It's bad.
Christopher Hardy, thank you so much for the super chat. Appreciate you very much. That was a fun game to watch, but still plenty to clean up. Thanks for all you guys do. Trevor Rocket, our buddy from north of the border. Thank you so much for the super chat. Appreciate you very much. Statement made. Beating a ranked opponent and taking advantage of Navy miscues. Brian, Trevor, and Vince, a quick assessment of the O-line before we get a deeper assessment when you lads do upon further review. Notre Dame win and IB postgame equals great.
And Sean, you were not on here because the super chat came up before you joined the show.
Yes.
No, Trevor loves you.
And just
I
in
think
case
I'll agree to some degree the offensive line played well today. They maybe somebody thinks they did better in the run game than I do. Maybe somebody thinks they did better in the pass game than somebody else does. But overall, I think the offensive line battled and competed. And, for the most part, outside of a few mistakes, which is going to happen when Navy does what they do, I thought they did what they needed to do today. And at times they were pretty good. And at times they were, okay, I need to see more movement there and those type of things. But it just, to me, especially after last week, because I thought there was a lot of stretches in last week's game where they just did not play well at all. And I thought especially the fourth quarter of last week's game was really bad. To see them bounce back this way against a better defense, a more aggressive defense, a more multiple defense and how they attack you, pleased. It's progress. And now you get a week off to get this new look line with Billy at left guard, some extra work. I feel good about it. I feel real good about it.
It's a really good point. Really good point.
Because I'll say this, Florida State, if they play motivated, has a talented defensive line.
Sure.
And this is going to be a money game for some of those guys. This is going to be a, primetime Notre Dame. I'm going to the NFL. I might opt out next week, but I'm giving you everything I got this week. So they're going to have to be at their best. Trevor, I'm right. That's why you're laughing. I'm right.
Man, don't get me started on Florida State. That'll be a segment for the next show that we do.
Yeah.
No, I mean, offensive line played well. I don't think that it's a mystery that Billy Schrouth he comes back healthy, gets inserted on the left side of the offensive line, and they have one of their best games in pass protection. I don't think there's a lot of I don't think there's a lot of mystery there. I don't have much more to add than what Brian did. It's a lot to build on. It was good.
James Costanzo, thank you so much for the super chat.
George's little brother.
Yeah, that's great. Sorry, go James. Irish. Hey, gotta appreciate that. Just go Irish. Thank you so much, James. Appreciate you checking in.
Love it. It's a great win.
John A1, thank you so much for the super chat. Best pass pro game so far this year. Navy brought their C- D+ game, and Notre Dame made them pay. Billy Schrouth playing next to Knapp helped. Not having two freshmen side by side made a difference.
Spot on.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more.
I think Navy. Yeah, I think I'd say I'd give them a little better in C- D+ game. I think part of that's Notre Dame. But yeah, I mean, Navy was making uncharacteristic mistakes. But Vince, I think you pointed to it. They don't play in a lot of games like this.
Correct.
Where there's this kind of, just there's this much on the line.
Right.
I just don't think that they do.
Yep. I mean, it's a combination of who Notre Dame is defensively, the speed, the athleticism, all of that. And it's a huge game for Navy, man. They're not used to being ranked. They're not used to being undefeated, last weekend of October, and then hosting Notre Dame in a big game like that. That's just not what they're used to doing. And I'm not saying that those guys can't handle pressure, because if anybody in the world can handle pressure, it's those guys. You know what I mean? But they played a little tighter. You know what I mean? They played a little tighter. They just did. That's why they turned the ball over as much as they did. Tyler Evans, thanks for the super chat. People who picked Navy to win, I don't want to hear that, well, you played Navy.
Where's it
Brian,
true
isn't
that,
why
national analysts were actually picking? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Vince.
I was gonna say, isn't this like what you said earlier? It's a lose-lose for Notre Dame, basically. I mean, when they play Navy.
It's like, I mean, look, the national media is so easy to predict, right? I mean, they're so easy to predict. What did I tell you guys after the Texas A&M game? So if A&M starts winning, they're going to be like, wow, they're a different team now than they were then. And we've already started. We heard that like 3 weeks after that game.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yep.
And it'll be the same thing here. It's like, oh, Navy's tough, and Randy Cross talking like nonsense, like, oh, they got a really good run defense. I'm like, no, they don't. What? Like, tell me you haven't watched Navy without telling me you haven't watched Navy, Randy. Come on, brother. You're an offensive lineman. You're a Hall of Famer. Like
you know better.
Come on, dude.
You
got to be better than that.
Yeah.
And I know he picked Navy, but were there other national people picking Navy?
Well, Pat McAfee picked Navy, but I don't.
Well, he's an idiot.
Stock in who he picks.
But anyone that's not an idiot picking Navy.
Well, the two guys that picked Navy were the guest picker.
Somebody told me Joel Klatt picked Navy. Is that true?
Yeah, he did.
Did he?
Wow.
Yeah, he did.
That's surprising.
Yeah, from all those people, I don't want to hear jack from you about, well, I mean, you beat Navy.
Right, exactly.
You know, okay, you're correct.
Look,
Tyler,
Coach,
you are correct.
It was funny because McAfee picked Navy, and
yes, he did.
Old ball coach just kind of chuckled and laughed and was like, yeah, the trenches are a mismatch pretty much. So all of that talk, it's just funny having that stark contrast of McAfee, who's a performer. He's there for the performance.
100%.
And a guy like Saban that is like the best
actually
to
takes
ever
the game
do
seriously.
Yes. And when he makes his grand picks, and then Saban just comes right behind him, like,
look,
that's not gonna happen.
Here's the thing about Navy. They outside of Army, they don't play a team the rest of the year that is over 500 right now. They're gonna keep winning games.
Not accurate. They play Tulane, correct? Doesn't Navy play Tulane, or does Army play Tulane?
No, Navy already played Tulane. They beat them 56-44.
That's
Memphis. I'm sorry.
They play Tulane, who's also 5-2. But outside of those two teams,
I missed that. I'm sorry. They're 6-2 now after today.
Okay.
So everybody else is 500 or less. They're going to win a lot more games.
No one's getting excited about Tulane, right? I mean, that to your point,
fair.
Vince, like no one's going to be picking Tulane to beat.
Right.
Right. Yeah. But if they win that game, and like you said, they're going to keep winning, and they're going to get back into the top 25, hopefully.
Correct. Tyler, thank you for the super chat. Appreciate you very much. Roughing the passer call on KVA was beyond dumb. Go Irish. We talked about that.
Yes, it was. I think there was another super chat about that too, from Eric Carroll, who I love this super chat, 51-14. Appreciate you, man, very, very much. This is also, guys, this is Eric Carroll's first game ever watching Notre Dame live. I saw him put that in the chat earlier. So his first game, and I believe he put some on the board. Or in Trevor, didn't he put a super chat up earlier in the week about that as well?
Yeah, it was the mailbag yesterday.
Yeah, first time ever seeing Notre Dame in person, and he got to watch them dominate in an opponent. He says that thought the roughing the passer call was BS from my upper deck view, but other than that, an amazing first game experience. Go Irish!
That's awesome.
I agree with you, man. I thought that was a terrible call. Absolutely terrible call.
Al Golden's a good enough defensive coordinator to start teaching his guys to levitate, I think.
Gravity ain't got nothing on them.
I was wondering where he was going with that one. I was like, okay, where are you going with this one, Trevor? That's really well done, my friend. That's awesome.
I appreciate it.
Mic drop moment for Trevor. He's out. Michael S., thank you so much for the super chat. Joe Klatt said Notre Dame's defense is beat up and Navy never turns the ball over and predicted an outright win. So much for expert analysis.
This goes back to the
true.
Go ahead, Vince. Go ahead.
I was to say what he said is a true statement. Okay, Notre Dame's defense was beat up. They've had a lot of injuries. Okay, that's true. And Navy doesn't turn the ball over. Also true. Now, that's taking.
He still pulled a 2 + 2 = 7, though.
It's exactly my point. Yes,
right.
That is 100% correct. And you can say both of those things. Both of those things can be accurate, and they are. And Notre Dame won 51-14. So, because Navy turned the ball over a ton, and Notre Dame is a markedly better team than Navy is. It just is what it is. And it's okay to say that, and you can still be a patriotic American and say those words. You know what I mean? Like, It's okay that Notre Dame's a better football team, and they showed it. They showed it. Look, even if Navy doesn't turn the ball over like they did, Notre Dame still wins this game going away.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
I still think part of this. I'm sorry, Trev. Go ahead, man.
No, I was just going to say both can be true. You can say Notre Dame was the better football team and Navy is still a good football team.
correct.
I mean, the most frustrating thing, and I've learned this from my lifetime of being a Notre Dame fan up to this point, is just there's like 6 opponents that Notre Dame could beat and get respect from like the national media. That's the reality of the life of being a Notre Dame fan. And sometimes it's just funny because I look at it now comically of hearing it's like, yo, Navy's the team you got to look out for. They score 44.8 points per game. They run a difficult offense. This Notre Dame team is beat up. And then they beat them. It's like, okay, well, guys, it's a service school. Like, what were we expecting? And the same people that say that are the same ones that predicted the loss. So I just look at it from a comical standpoint because it's just, Joel Klatt, it's even funny. Joel Klatt was a guy that was very high on Notre Dame at the start of the season. He was. And the second the Northern Illinois one happened, to get more clicks, views, whatever, et cetera, it turned into, well, I mean, just they're not who we thought they were. It's like, okay, well.
I think some of that's like what you and I talked about in the mailbag, Trevor. Some of it's just lazy.
Yeah.
You don't realize how deep Notre Dame is. So when you see all the injuries they have, you just assume, well, I mean, a team like Notre Dame, because I remember way back in 2018 when Notre Dame lost a starting cornerback and there was a big drop-off after. Well, that used to be how Notre Dame was. If you lost a starter, there's a big drop-off after that. There was.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Yep.
That's not the case anymore. And if you watch this team play, you're like, okay, yeah, Bubakar's out and Burnham's out, but this number 44 can ball, and this number 40, who the heck is that guy? Where's he? Oh, he's been hurt. He's a baller. Oh, he was a top 100 recruit. My bad. I think a lot of it has to do with that. Well, Leonard Moore's not going to be able to play for Benjamin Morrison. He was a 3-star recruit. He was never a freaking 3-star recruit, no matter what the recruiting services said. Just another example of why I tell y'all, stop looking at this crap. He didn't go to camps. He didn't kiss butt, and he committed to Notre Dame super early. If Leonard Moore would have gone to camps and would have been wide open or maybe started visiting other schools, he'd have jumped up in the top 100. It's just the facts. That's how it works now. He was always a very talented player with a very high upside. But I think that's where that comes from. He sees the injuries, and he's thinking, well, they're going to replace Benjamin Morrison with some borderline scholarship kid, which is what used to be the case at Notre Dame. I mean, you lose, what was it, in 2011, you lose Gary Gray, and you're going to replace him with Low Wood. And thank goodness that they end up moving Kavari Russell. You know what I mean? Like, this isn't that anymore. You're losing Benjamin Morrison, and you're replacing him with a kid who's 2 inches taller, 10 pounds heavier, and faster. I'm not saying he's better because Benjamin's a stud. I'm saying he is those things, though, however. And I think part of it's just that laziness of people who don't really know Notre Dame. And I somewhat understand it because you can't study everyone when you're doing things like that Joel Klatt does, who is a Big Ten announcer. I mean, you do have to focus on that league that you call. That is your job. I'm not even – because I actually like Joel Klatt. I think sometimes he says some things from like, oh, it's good, Joel. Good, Joel. Oh, Joel. No, man. Like, he's not just slightly wrong. So he'll just like do good analysis. I'm going to jump off the deep end on this one and just say something crazy. You know what I mean? And that's just kind of how he does. Or I'm like, oh, it's good analysis. And then he drops his top 10 and you're like, that doesn't have anything to do. That makes no sense based on the things you just spent the last hour talking about for that to be your top 10. You know what I mean? It's like, it's that kind of thing. Overall, I like him, but I think a lot of that's just laziness, honestly. Is they just don't know Notre Dame and they just make assumptions about, well, Notre Dame was this way under Bob Davie, so I'm just going to go ahead and assume that they're that way now. And guys, Marcus Freeman's Notre Dame is a lot different when it comes to talent. Now, we got to learn if he can be a champion. This is what we said in the show the other day, Sean. I want to get your thoughts on this. The question about whether or not Marcus Freeman's a good football coach or a good head football coach, they've been gone since last year, in my opinion. And they're certainly gone now. The question isn't, is Marcus Freeman a good football coach? The question is now, is Marcus Freeman a championship football coach? That's the question here now. Because he's good. Because he's going to recruit at an elite level. I don't know if the guy's going to be a better game day coach or he's going to do this or he's going to do that, but the talent that they're recruiting, we talked about this, guys, in the show yesterday, Trevor, Thursday. Notre Dame, Sean, the way Notre Dame played against Georgia Tech on last Saturday, if they would have played this way in 2021, it'd either been a down-to-the-wire game or they might have lost. But they're so much more talented now that they can play that way and play a C-plus game and still win by 18 and it not be that close. And I don't think people truly appreciate. It's the same reason people discounted their chances against Texas A&M. They had no concept of how good Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price were. None. We tried to tell them all offseason. They had no concept of how good that Notre Dame secondary was. I think Greg McElroy was the only national ESPN type analyst that gave any kind of, that's an elite secondary before the season. And hey, did you guys notice he didn't call Jayden Thomas a tight end today?
Aha.
So anyway, Sean, that's kind of my thing, is that's where we're at with Marcus Freeman. It's not, is he a pretty good head coach? He's shown that, recruiting, all this. It's, is he a championship coach? That's the final hurdle he has to show. And we don't know the answer to that, but that it shouldn't be about, is he good or not anymore?
Yeah, the program has gotten better each and every year, right? And he has been his own obstacle, right? You go back and look at some of the losses and you say, dude, that loss is unacceptable. Stanford, unacceptable. Northern Illinois, unacceptable. Marshall, unacceptable. But he's answered the bell, and you have to remember, this is Notre Dame. This is one of the most difficult head coaching positions in all of college football, and it's his first stint as a head coach, which raises the level of difficulty. If he was an ice skater or a gymnast, the level of difficulty would be like, man, twice as much as a normal routine. And he has handled it with grace. I think at times I think at times he's been too transparent, but that's just his nature. It's just, and that reflects in his coaches. That's what we hear on the recruiting trail. This staff is extremely honest. We hear from the kids, we hear from the parents. So that's just a reflection of Marcus Freeman and who he is as a leader of this program, right? You want to talk about game day coaching, the end of the Ohio State game? Okay, fine. But that's been answered, right? You brought it up with the Northern Illinois game, time management, things that were questioned. I think you're starting to see him become more comfortable in his skin being who he is as a head coach and finally saying, if I go down, I'm going to go down being me and my guys playing the way I want them to play, right? And he was put in certain positions that I think caused him to be a little cautious, maybe caused him to feel like he needed to keep things close to the vest and maybe not be as trusting without going down that rabbit hole. But now you're starting to see that he has a coaching staff that he feels like, I can trust Mike Denbrock. I can go over here and focus on other things and trust that the offensive staff under the guidance of Mike Denbrock are going to do the right thing. And they're going to bring a game plan to me that I'm going to okay and say, look, go be aggressive. Let's score points. We talked about it last week. He showed in Georgia Tech, like, yo, he's showing you offense. I'm going to support you and give you plenty of opportunities to put points on the board. Not because I'm just being aggressive on a fourth down. No, I just really believe our offense now, the operation, can be aggressive, be explosive, and put points on the board, and I trust it. So this is the growth that you're being able to watch a head coach go through at Notre Dame that is unfamiliar to a lot of Notre Dame fans. We've never seen a first-time head coach at the helm of a Notre Dame program. And he just tied the record for the most wins against ranked opponents in his third season. And he constantly builds.
He might have another one coming up in a few weeks.
In a few weeks. Absolutely. So, I mean, ladies and gents, as much as you are well within your rights to critique him, and he should be critiqued for the things that fall at his feet, for the certain failures offensively. If you want to question certain things in recruiting, by all means, do that. But you have to look at this team and what they have suffered via injury, and for them to keep on going and to get better as an operation, as a team, that speaks everything. That speaks volumes about everything you need to know about who he is as a leader and who he is on that recruiting trail along with his staff. And last but not least, this is a program where the players, and you can take it for what it's worth, the players play for the head coach. And there have been previous teams that have played hard for each other in spite of the head coach. It's a totally different thing at Notre Dame right now.
Can I just say something else for everyone watching the Missouri-Alabama game? That Marcus Freeman went 8-2 with multiple wins over ranked teams with Missouri's quarterback. I'm just saying.
Well, the quarterback that was in. Oh,
Yeah.
no, he's still in. I'm sorry. I thought he got replaced. Yeah. He's still in.
No, I'm just saying Notre Dame won 8 games, including a win over number 4 team in the country, a road win over North Carolina, neutral site win over Boise State, a road win over a ranked Syracuse team. I just want to point out that guy went 8-2 at Notre Dame as a starter. Just want to make sure y'all are. And the other starter in that game, the other starter on that team where they won 9 games is currently a walk-on wide receiver at Notre Dame. Yeah.
Part-time placeholder.
Yeah. Just want to throw that out there.
And by the way, those of you that might complain about our backup quarterback, would you rather have Missouri's backup quarterback? I'm just saying things are better.
I'd rather have Notre Dame's backup quarterback. That's all I'm saying.
Well, that's entirely different discussion. I'm just comparing with the backup at Missouri. So I think I would take our backup. And I would take up the backup. I would take all 4 guys in our quarterback room over Missouri's backup quarterback. Things are much better. That's all I'm saying. Things are much better.
Go ahead, Trev. You wanted to say it. Go ahead, man.
I was going to say, I will take our backup part-time holder.
Yes.
Yeah. Look, man.
All right. There it is.
I'll say it.
There it is.
Anyways.
Jay, thank you for the super chat. The boys ate today. Everyone wanted to get in on a piece. Great effort on both sides. When this team is clicking, they're very scary. Could not agree with that more.
Jay, that's a great point. If they play like this the rest of the year, they won't play another competitive game. And this is about the 3rd week in a row I've said that. And guess what? They haven't played a competitive game in any of those games. You know what I mean? Like, they broke Georgia Tech. I mean, they flat out broke Georgia Tech. But yeah, if they play like this the rest of the year, guys, they're not going to play another close game until we get to the playoff. Right.
Exactly. Stops. Because there's 2 S's. Stops. 7.
I thought you were struggling with it at first. I was like, shouldn't be hard, Vince.
No. That's why I had to clarify. I don't want people to think I was like struggling to read. But
you can do a Vince, sound it out. You use your words. Use your words.
Anyway, Stops 7. Thanks for the super chat. Appreciate you very much. Loved how Notre Dame answered today. Never let Navy hold on to success very long. I'll say it again. J Love is different. I really like K Mitchell's quickness too. I thought it was going to be, we talked about it in the pregame show, if anybody was listening, that we were talking about the wide receiving core and how it could be a breakout game for one of them, or something, something along those lines. That was the topic of conversation. And I was like, you know what? Keep an eye out for Chris Mitchell. I think he could have a day, today. And then he goes and he gets that first touchdown. I was like, yeah, here we go. And then we didn't really hear from him the rest of the game. But he did get, I believe, his first touchdown in a Notre Dame uniform, if I'm not mistaken. Is it second? Okay.
Caught one against Stanford as well.
Fair enough. So, yeah. But he did get into the end zone today. So I'll take partial credit for that one.
Well, they just didn't need him after he got him that touchdown, Vince. You know what I mean? He was good.
Right.
Can I just say something else? Jeremiah Love's a freak. Jadarian Price is special. But there's going to come a day when number 21 is the leading ball carrier for Notre Dame, and defenses are going to be like, no, thank you. Pass. Coach, I got a hammy this week. I don't think I can go. He's so freaking good. I'm talking about Keidron Young, obviously. I hope that kid's patient and waits his turn, because when it comes, he is going to be special at Notre Dame. Can you guys imagine in 2 years when Keidron Young is the leading ball carrier and he's running behind a senior version of Charles Jagasol, and he's running behind junior Gerby Lambert and senior Sullivan Absher and maybe 5th-year senior Billy Strouth and Ashton Craig? You're just going to be like, are you kidding me? And he's got either Kenny or CJ throwing behind him. Oh, man. I wish I was like the movie Click. I just want to go forward real quick and see what it's going to look like. That's going to be fun to watch. That's going to be really fun to watch.
The crazy thing are the backups on the other teams that have to face him. This is not the level of talent we usually go
hold on.
against.
Why are they still got their starters in the game? Oh, they don't? I mean, Notre Dame's backup offensive line is bigger than its starting offensive line. Think about that. Because Absher's 320 plus, Christopher Tarrick's 330 plus, Sam Pendleton's 310, Tosh Baker's 320 plus. You're like, seriously? They put their backups in and they're even bigger than the starters? What? And you put a 230-pound running back with that kind of power and foot quickness? Are you kidding me? This is ridiculous. Oh my gosh. Freaking Stanford's quarterback's awful. Just do a terrible pick to end the game. They had a chance to go down and win the game, and he's still just one of the worst picks I've ever seen. Anyway, go ahead.
Vic Cummings, my man, Coach Vic. What's up, dude? Appreciate the super chat. And he says, Vince, much love, my brother. Completely off topic. Can you shout out Tommy Reese for going 8-2 with Drew Pine at quarterback? Right? Bam, boom.
I'm just saying. All the hate for Tommy Reese. Dude won 8. He went 8-2.
Yeah.
With Drew Pine as the starting quarterback, and they had 2 wins over top 20 teams.
Right.
I'm just saying.
I mean,
and they had a road win over a team that won 9 games and played for the ACC championship. I'm just saying. Just saying.
Yeah. Right. Ray Price, thank you so much for the super chat. Appreciate you very much. I got to go to the game today in the Meadowlands. Great game to go watch. As always, thank you for all you do to keep us in the loop. Go Irish.
Ray, it is our pleasure, my friend. It is absolutely our pleasure. Thank you for the super chat, and thank you for tuning in.
Patrick S. Duffy, thank you so much for the super chat. Love. Leonard Moore with 3 exclamation points announced himself as a star. He didn't have many opportunities in this game, but when he did, he obviously made the most of it. I mean, his length was showcased on that interception, right? I mean,
that was ridiculous.
His arms were just like so long. I mean, that was impressive. The whole thing was impressive.
Yeah, he's a dude.
ICURN with Irish Luck. Thank you for the super chat. I don't think you can understate the impact of Riley missing spring reps. He looks like he's finally getting comfortable. I'd say the last 3 games he's gotten comfortable, and it continues to rise. Yeah.
Yeah. I think he's spot on. I mean, missing those reps, missing summer reps.
Yeah.
He's absolutely correct. You're starting to, and you know, you're working with a bunch of receivers you haven't played with before. Bo Collins wasn't out there in the spring. So
right. Right.
And you had to revamp the offensive line. I agree.
Mark E. Stewart, thank you so much for the super chat. Love, happy to get a good win, but why was Notre Dame playing with tempo midway through the 3rd quarter and rushing to the line when the clock is the biggest enemy for a team like Navy when they are down several scores?
I think
go ahead.
No, go ahead, Vince. You got it.
I was just going to say they weren't playing offense like they were playing against Navy. They were playing their offense. They weren't worried about the clock or killing clock or anything like that at that moment. They were running their offense. It didn't matter who the defense was. That was a faceless defense.
Yes.
They're just running their offense. That was my point.
It shows what we were talking about earlier in the show, guys, when we were talking about Marcus Freeman and Mike Denbrock having a different attitude towards offense, right? Isn't that what we always say? We want Marcus Freeman to be more aggressive. It wasn't, hey, guys, we got a 31-14 lead. Let's sit on the ball. Let's run as much. It's still 8 minutes left in the 3rd quarter. We're running our offense. You know, we keep scoring. It doesn't matter how much time's left in the game. If we keep scoring, and I think that it was that kind of mindset. Like I wouldn't have necessarily crushed them if they would have gone with a little bit more of a slower tempo, but it's just kind of like you're up 17 points. There's still a whole quarter and a half of football left. You run 3-4 minutes off the clock, but then punt the football away, and all of a sudden they get the ball. It's 31-21, and you're getting on 4. It's like, oh, you've lost all the momentum, and it's like, look, we're up 17 points. If we score another touchdown, we're up 24 points. I mean, they can't come back on us if we keep putting the ball in the end zone. And you're keeping that pressure on Navy, in my opinion. So I think, Vince, you nailed it. This is what we do. This game's not over yet. This is what we do. We're not going into 4-minute mode right now. There's still 23 minutes left in the game. We're doing what we do. It's still your job to stop us. So, Mark, I understand where you're coming from, Mark. I do. But I just think if there'd have been like 8 minutes to go in the 4th quarter, I'd have been like, slow it down.
Yeah.
But you're not even to the half point of the 3rd quarter. Your job is to go out and score.
And they only had the one possession in the 3rd quarter. Like that was it. you know?
Right.
So I think that's part of it too.
Yeah. Now, if they would have scored there to make it 38-14, was it 38-14, and then Navy went 3 and out and punted the ball, maybe then they would have started to run it out. But at that point in time, it's like, no, we're trying to do what we do. That was a great point, Vince. Great point. This is the last super chat, by the way, fellas.
All right, ND Milton fan, thank you very much for the super chat. Was going to make a BK comment, but don't we to get schooled again by Brian? I don't want to get scolded by Brian. LOL. Fun game to watch. Offense looks to be revving up. Hashtag Tever. Is that supposed to be Trevor?
Trevor.
That's what I thought.
Trevor doesn't help.
Doesn't help. Wow.
So this is you have to understand the context of this.
Yes, please fill me in.
So we did the mailbag yesterday.
Okay.
And ND Milton fan says, what are the 2 things that Brian Kelly said that annoy you the most?
Ooh.
And so I just sat there and I said, ND Milton, I don't know why you keep asking this question. I've been doing this for 30 years, man. You know what I mean? And you keep asking me questions like this. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know why Trevor doesn't write good articles. I guess that's my fault since I'm the boss. And I don't know why Stiers doesn't do good shows. I guess I have to take responsibility. So, like, at first, everybody thought I was really pissed at him. And then they realized the bit I was doing. And then Angela, I went up to talk to Angela after the show. And I was telling her about it. And she goes, so at what point in time did you say winning is hard? And I was like, I freaking forgot to say how the winning is hard.
Oh,
My wife called me out on this. Like, immediate response. She goes, when did you say winning is hard? And I was so mad I forgot to say it. And I was like, Trevor even had a response. So Trevor's like the way Trevor thought that the way he asked me the question, I was actually mad because I played it off I thought I played it off
until he started mentioning like us. He was like, I've been doing this for 30 years, ND Milton fan. I was like, dude, it's okay. Like, it was just a question. I was like,
Brian's a little sensitive today.
I was like,
salty.
I was like, okay, don't talk about.
So Trev's like, I think I got him in trouble because the way I asked the question, I think I might have got him in trouble.
I thought I did, man. I was like, well, great. Now ND Milton fan doesn't mess with me. I was like, I got him in trouble. I don't write good articles. I was like, man.
I thought I played it pretty well, guys. I thought I played it pretty well. They said it was the second best acting job that I've done, with the first being the day after Brian Kelly's family thing. Do you guys remember when I did like the first 15 minutes of the show in a Southern accent?
Oh,
I think it was me and Sean were on that show, wasn't it?
I don't remember that at all.
Yeah.
So the day after he did the family thing, we did a show.
Yeah.
And I probably dropped like 5 bless your hearts. I spent the first 15 minutes of the show talking with a fake Southern accent.
That's fantastic.
But no, ND Milton fan, I appreciate you, man. I was not mad at you. I thought
ND Milton fan is the best, but ND Milton fan can stir it up. Well, he stirs it up. He can stir some stuff up.
Yeah.
Fair.
Yeah. So, but the best takeaway is my wife calls me out at the end, and she says, like, when did you do winning is hard? And I just, first of all, I'm like, I love you so much right now for saying that. That my wife knew that Brian Kelly always talked about how winning is hard and how much it annoys me. But I can't believe I forgot to say that, guys. I'm still disappointed.
I think Angela might dislike him more than you do, bro.
I think that's probably accurate. That's not wrong. That's not wrong. She doesn't dislike him as much as she dislikes Brian Van Gorder, but she's got completely different reasons to not like him. So, yeah.
Sounds like a whole other show to me.
That's more of an off the record conversation.
Okay, fair enough. All right, well, that is going to do it for our analysis post-game show-wise of Notre Dame's 51-14 win over the Naval Academy. That moves them to 7-1 on the season, and we'll see what happens with the polls and everything else fun in that regard. But Notre Dame goes into the bye week with a victory. We'll see what they've got coming out of the bye week with Florida State. But we've got one more show to talk about this game, and that is going to be tomorrow. Well, yes, sir. Go ahead.
I think I know what they have for Florida State coming out of the break.
Well, but
pain.
Hopefully. Yeah, there you go. So we got one more. We got a Upon Further Review coming at you tomorrow evening around 7:00 would be the attempt at this point. So 24 hours from right now. Make sure you're tuned in, but you're never going to know unless you hit that notification bell, subscribe, all of those different things. You've got to do that. And then, of course, hit the like button for this show tonight. We'll have Upon Further Review coming your way after we dive into the film. That'll be Brian and I tomorrow evening. And then, of course, we've got a whole week's worth of shows in the afternoon and in the evenings moving forward into the bye week. And so, hey, some great college football that is going on right now. Vanderbilt, they're making it interesting against Texas. Just put one up. They're only down 7. And some fun games tonight as well. So should be a fun evening. But fellas, we can watch football tonight with happiness in our hearts because Notre Dame dominated this afternoon and it was fun to talk about. Thanks everybody for hanging out with us. Really appreciate that. So jump on the boards@irishbreakdown.com, everybody, and we will talk to you tomorrow on the next edition of the Irish Breakdown podcast. So for Brian, Trevor, Sean, I'm Vince. We will talk to you next time. Have a great night.
Peace.